Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and apologies for the slight technical issues there as we came online this morning. And welcome to this Teach from Home webinar focused on setting up GSuite for education. Just to run you through the timings for today's webinar, it's broken down into separate sections. So in the first hour, we're going to have a look at what is GSuite for education. So we're going to dig into what Google for Education is, what the tools look like, and what services they offer. And then in around an hour's time, we're going to look at how to get set up. So the technical aspects of registering and creating and setting up a domain for Google for Education. And then the second part of that, around an hour and 3/4 time, we're going to look at the admin console and dig into that in detail. And then at around 2:30 p.m., depending on which time zone you're in, we're going to look at, in detail, in depth, at CS First, Google Classroom, and Applied Digital Skills. So that's the agenda for this webinar. Obviously, if you're watching a recording of this, or if you're not watching live, you can jump forward to the appropriate point to jump straight to the information you want. So firstly, welcome. I'm joined by a number of people today on the webinar. So joining me from the UK is Jess and John, and also Ben, who are joining me on this call today. So all four of them, one of them is slightly off the bottom there, but all four of them joining me on the webinar as we go through and introduce you to Google for Education. So we'll get to meet them all a bit later on. But for now, let me just start by just giving a bit of background information. Google has a range of partners available across Africa who can help you with setup. So we are going to take you in the webinar today through how to set up Google for Education. But you can also reach out to any of these partners. So in South Africa, we have, and southern countries, we have Cloud Ed Solutions. In West Africa, Nigeria, MKB. And in Kenya and East Africa, Power IT. So those details are in our document, which we'll share with in a moment, but they are our partners. And we're also bringing this webinar today in partnership with MTN, who provide a range of packages for schools. And we'll talk about this a bit later on in the webinar. But they provide ways for your students to get access to data. So when we're talking about being able to access the Google tools, which are online, there are ways in which you can get access to data for both your teachers and the students in the schools you're working with. But we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the webinar. Most importantly, as we go through today, if you have any questions, we have a question document, and we'll put the link in the chat for you to be able to click and access. But this is the link you need. It's on the internet. If in the address bar, you type bit.ly/setupqa. We have a document there, and whilst the presentations are going on, and we will keep our eye on that document and we'll answer questions as they come up. So if you have a question, if you want to ask a question, if you go over to our questions document at bit.ly/setupqa, you can ask questions there, and one of our team will be in there typing the answers in. So if you've got any questions at all throughout today, pop them in there, and every so often we'll come back and have a look and try and answer the questions as they come in. So just some information there on how we're going to work today. So we're going to start the first hour by digging into what is GSuite for Education. So we're going to dig into what the product looks like and what that is. When we talk about Google and GSuite for Education, we're talking about a range of tools that are available for you to use. And so those vary from classroom-focused tools, such as Google Classroom and Google Forms, tools which help with communication, such as Gmail and Google Meet and Google Chat, productivity tools that can be used for creating work, such as Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Jamboard, and of course storing all that inside Google Drive, and then task management tools like Google Calendar and Keep. And then behind the scenes, for the people setting it up and managing that, we have the admin console and Google Vault to help you control those. Different schools use these tools in different ways. Some schools use all of the tools. Some only use some of the tools. There's some schools we work with who maybe only use Google Classroom or only use Google Drive or use Google Docs. And we'll talk in the second hour a bit more about how you turn on and off the different services. But for now, we're just going to go through and introduce some of those services. And Jess is going to join me to take us through some of those early tools. Morning, Jess.
Good morning. Hi, everyone.
So I'm going to switch over so that you can present. And Jess, which tool are you going to introduce us to first?
We're going to start with Drive, which is where all of, or many of these tools can be stored.
Okay, Jess, take it away.
Thank you. Super. So as I said, Google Drive is kind of a hub for a lot of the different files you can make in the GSuite for Education console. So if you are just logging into your Google account, once you're logged in, you can access that apps in different ways. You can use what we call the waffle, or some people say the grid, and you can find Drive is usually right up at the top. You can also move these around as you prefer. You can also type in the URL bar to just put drive.google.com. You can do this with any of the Google apps. So all of the ones we're going to show you today, you'll do the same thing. You just use the word for the app first and then add .google.com, and it will open up that app. So here's my Drive, and you can see there are already lots of folders. I've even color-coded the folders, and you see some different file types here. These are the Google apps, some of which we will explore a bit more, and some that you can also explore about too. So what is really amazing about GSuite for Education is that you have unlimited storage in Google Drive. So you can see how much storage you've used here, but there is no limit. So it's a wonderful resource to share and organize files in. You can see automatically a couple of things that will come up if you are using them as a classroom folder, and Ben's going to tell you more about classroom, and even later Lindsay will go into that more in depth. So that will automatically store all of the files in your Google Classroom that your students are turning in, and you don't have to organize them yourself. Google Drive, along with Google Classroom, does that automatically. And you'll also see if you're using Google Meet, which John is going to talk about, Google Meet will make a Meet recordings file automatically when you record your meetings. Now, you'll see something here that you might not see on some of your drives, the admin console. If you do have access to that, that's great. And Andy will go over that more today. The admin console is where you can turn on and off these settings, like external sharing, for example, which you can do with any folders you can share within your organization or outside of your organization. And there are a few different sharing settings I'll mention in a moment. And also there is a thing called shared drives. So these are usually really useful within an organization to share things like templates and common files that you will use across your team. And you can create folders and subfolders within this as well, just like you can in Drive. There is a limit, but it's 400,000 files, so you don't need to worry about that limit usually. And I'd also like to mention, and this is a link in the Q&A doc, the cheat sheets that Google has created for all of the tools. This Drive one is really a nice overview of the various apps that you will see stored within Drive, and it tells a little bit about what you can use those for, and we'll tell you a little bit more too. And then here you can see the cheat sheet of what all those different buttons do, and each of the G Suite products has the same cheat sheet so that you can use this as a reference for reminding you what those icons mean. But usually Google products are pretty simple and clear about what they do. The sharing settings I mentioned are nicely laid out here. So if you want to understand what it means when you're making someone an owner or a viewer of a document, you can see the different permissions that they have and what you want to give them to. So I will show you here along the right side too, there's a shared drives cheat sheet, just so you know, because they are a little bit different, the main drive and the shared drive. And then if you click learn by product, you can see cheat sheets for all the different products. So I'll just jump over to Docs real quick because that's what I'm going to show you next. And the getting started with Docs is also helpful. But again, if you click on Docs cheat sheet, it has this lovely overview of what those different buttons mean. You will have seen similar icons in different word processing applications. And of course, we have our basic formatting of your fonts and your line spacing and all of that. And basically, everything you see is what you can do. And the simplicity is what makes Google Docs and the other G Suite apps really easy to use. So let's explore that a bit. I'll use my docs.new is another little handy trick that you can use that shortcut with any of the apps to create a new blank file. So I'll give my title here. Okay, and just to show you really quickly some of the features, as I insert my title, subtitle, text, I can change this using the automatic headings. And what I like using these, because then you might notice on the left side, I can then see like the table of contents that kind of automatically pops up, and those become bookmarks where you can jump within the document to those different pieces. So this is, I can center it, I can change the color, I can change the font, and I can change the font size, even though I've made it, making it a title automatically changed the font size and made it a little bit bigger. But you can still customize the text even if you use those general headings. I can also click undo because I didn't want to change that. And let me show you also, this is just the general typing features, but we can also insert things like images. And if we go on the web, Google Images already pops up. And let's see, I always like to look for some pretty flowers. So let's insert one of these, for example. These are usually images that are already not in, copyright issue. Maybe that one was not one. You can also upload from your computer, from your photos, and anywhere you like. Oh, let's see. That is, you can upload more than one photo at a time. And then, now it's come through. Okay, so now I have this huge photo and I can resize that simply by using the tools there. You can change the features of how it moves with the text and all of that. So I could type with the text around it to explain that, and continue to change how it sits and how it interacts with the other features of the document. So anything that you see here on the menu bar is also here in the Word menu. So the drop-down menus that you see there, you can format the text that way as well. You can do your line spacing and the alignment, all of these things that you see here. And if you mouse over them and just let it pop up, you can see line spacing, for example. So it's really great just to, I think, play around with these tools and see what they can do. So those are just basic overviews of a couple of the tools we'll go over today. Ben's going to go more into Google Slides and
I was
some
going
other
to answer a couple of questions first that have
Oh,
come up in
okay.
the chat.
Great.
Thank you. And don't forget, by the way, that you can ask questions either in the chat in YouTube or on our Q&A document. But just a couple of things. Some people are asking about this, whether they can watch this again later. So the link that you've come through to this YouTube video, you can come onto this link later, and you can, again, watch the video back in your own time. So if you, we've obviously got a lot of content to go through today, but if there's certain content that you want to go through in your own time slower, or if you want to watch it in little sections and just pause it, then come back to the same link you used today to get to the video, and you can access this video again. So thank you, Jess, for taking us through Drive and Docs. And also Ben's going to be joining us now. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Andy. Hi, everyone.
And you're going to take us through the next tools to have a look at. So we'll pop your screen in, and Ben,
Fantastic.
off you go.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I think I just that was my fault. Sorry, Ben. I took you out for a moment there. Ben, you can start this time, and I'll disappear off.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks so many of you for joining us today. I'm going to talk to you about 3 tools quite quickly, but try and show you some tools that you might want to have a play around with after this. The first one is Google Slides. Google Slides is a presentation piece of software similar to others that you might have used previously. The difference here is how it can be used collaboratively and how it stores natively in the drive that Jess was just talking about. So Google Slides looks like this, and you can format this to however you want to do this. I'm giving an example here of a collaborative slide deck that I did for a class, and I gave them each a slide and asked them to put their information on their individual slide. So that's what the context of this is. What you can see on this Google Slides presentation is just like we did on the Docs presentation. You can insert images by clicking Insert Images, and you can search the web directly from within Google or upload from various places. That's what they did here. Secondly, you can format the text just like Jess talked about in Docs in almost exactly the same way. Some of the other things that you can do within Google Slides are the ability to insert by going to Insert and inserting videos. And you can, when you insert a video, this will just overlay on the top so you can see, it allows you to search YouTube directly, to add a URL if you know the web address, or to upload from your Google Drive. So if I wanted to find a video on mortars, because that's what we're looking about in the topic that I was delivering, I can find an appropriate video and I can insert that, and you'll see that it'll just appear over the top of here, and I can format that and move that wherever I want to do. On the right hand side, some video options appear too. So I can make it, and it's just loading, I can make it so that it starts and ends at certain points. So if that is a video that is 40 minutes long and I only want to watch a 5-minute snippet, I can make it so that it starts and ends at certain times. And you can also see that I can autoplay it so that as soon as I go onto that presentation, it does this for you. Additionally, you can insert audio, charts, diagrams, shapes, and lots of other things. Just with many of the Google tools, there are also comments features, which allows you as a member of staff or somebody who is working on presentations collaborating with a group to add comments directly on certain areas of that slide. What's very powerful about Google Slides here, and is the ability to be able to auto save this, just like all the other Google tools. It auto saves the work as you go, but also this presentation that I worked with a group of students the other day, each student was working on this all at the same time collaboratively to save away from lots and lots of the copy and paste issues that you might find. Again, there are normal functions at the top, so you can share this out, which is really interesting. You can download this as multiple different file types if you need to share this with people who aren't using Google already, as well as being able to present these on a screen like you would do with another presentation device. Finally, if you go to, well, penultimately, actually, there's two more. If you want to change the page setup, you can also use this as a desktop publishing program application. So you can change the sizes of the page. So if I wanted to suggest that I wanted this to be square pages, it'll obviously change the format, but you can see it's changed the shape of the presentation. Finally, on your presentations, you can also apply transitions and animations and templates within your Google Slides. Lots and lots of functionality within there. That's Google's presentation software. So next I want to talk about Google Sheets. Google Sheets is a spreadsheeting piece of software. If you've ever used any spreadsheets, you will see that it's a place for data to be gathered. And John later on will talk to you about Google Forms and how the two, actually Google Forms and Google Sheets, tie together. But this is a piece of data that has been gathered in some way. This might be that you've typed this in. This could have been taken from a survey or something similar. But what you can see here is that I have done a few things to this spreadsheet. I can, again, change the formatting in different ways. I can insert charts if I want to show this visually, simply by clicking the insert chart when I've selected some data. And that obviously says there's no data because I didn't select any. Apologies. But if I select it, now click insert chart, it's as quickly as creating charts that we need to, depending on the data that I've selected. Additionally, you can see here that based on the answer that has been given, there is a perfect example here of what we would call formatting, or conditional formatting. Allows you to be able to change the color of the cell, for example. And I've made it so that if the answer is true, it goes green, or if the answer is false, it goes red. I simply go to format at the top. First of all, I select the data that I want to do, click format and conditional formatting, and I can change some of the rules so that if it says true here, it goes green. If it says false, it goes red. That is quite a high level use of it, but you can see here there is some fantastic elements in terms of functions that you can do that you would normally want to do in spreadsheets. And if you literally select over a column here, it gives you in the bottom right hand corner the sum of what you've got, and you can click this little button here. You can get an average for that column, you can get a minimum and maximum, you can get a count, whatever else you need to do there. One other feature that you might need to do on spreadsheets is the ability to filter this information. So often you want to do this on your top bar. So you would select there and click this element that says filter. If I turn it off, it disappears. And if I turn it on, and then if on any column that I want to do, I can select and filter it based on A to Z. If it's based on letters or surnames, for example, or I can select all the students that got 10 out of 10, and then it tells you what they got on their filtered view. So again, the similar functionality to be able to download it as different functions and different formats by going to File, Download, I can email this as an attachment and it goes as an Excel file, as well as being able to use some of the very high function formatting that would be used to on a spreadsheet.
Hi, Ben. Just going to pick up some questions that are coming in, because lots of questions in the chat and the doc. So thank you to everyone that's adding questions as we go. I see this question quite a lot, actually. Somebody asked it in the chat a while ago. So what are the differences between, let's say, using a slides presentation and PowerPoint, or maybe using a Sheets or Excel? So how does the Google products differ to the Microsoft products?
So the main difference is the ability that it all sits within the ecosystem that we call Google Drive. So one of the key features here is that docs, sheets, slides, they are all accessed and saved in the same way. And so when you share permissions, you can do that from within Drive. Secondly, is the ability for multiple people to be working on the documents together. That is a key element. So ultimately, on this sheet that I've got here, me and Andy could be both shared into this and be working and looking at this data at the same time. And thirdly, is that what you'll notice on a lot of the Google tools, if you haven't seen it already, is that there is no save button, because this automatically saves for you. And so you can see that there are others, but that's three key features there that it sits in the ecosystem.
And where is the data saving to, Ben?
The data in
your sheet.
It's saving into Google Drive. So it stores in Google Drive for you.
Yeah, so everything we're talking about today, all of our different tools we're going to look at, and we're only giving you a very short overview right now, and we're going to dig a bit more detail a bit later. All of that data lives inside Google Drive, so it's all stored in the cloud and available from any device. So whether you're on a mobile device or whether you're on a desktop computer, you can go and access the information that you put into your spreadsheet or your document or your slide, and it'd be available for use. So thank you for taking us through that bit, Ben. I'll drop back out because you're going to talk briefly about Google Classroom, aren't you?
I am. So Google Classroom often is seen as what we would call mission control. This is the place where you can set students assignments, where students can interact with each other and ask each other questions and comments. You as a teacher can then potentially mark their work and give them feedback. And as well, there's an ability to collect grades and keep it into one system so that you're not having to have multiple different paper-based and exercise books and then take those home and then mark them and then put that information somewhere that you might need to do for your school grading systems. Google Classroom allows you to have that communication with students, that ability to administer all of your teaching activities, as well as share this with different teachers or teaching groups and students that you might be delivering with. So I know that Lindsay's going to go into some detail around Google Classroom later, but I just wanted to show you that when you go to classroom.google.com, forget about this bit here, that as Jess said, if you have anything with .google.com, it will take you to the tool. And once you've created a class, this is what it would look like. But if you've never created a class, and obviously there's lots I've got on here, you can literally click plus at the top, click create class. And what will happen when you put the details in, you start to get a picture around what a Google Classroom could do. So the first element, and again, I will go slowly through some of this because Lindsay will go through in a little bit more detail, is the stream. This is the bit where you might put announcements to students. You might tell them a welcome to that class. It may well be information about a timetable or a trip that might be happening. It could be some information about a certain reminder about a task that needs completing. And that is on the stream. Additionally, you can add teachers to the people stream. People tab, and they can co-teach this with you and set work and collect work from students. Additionally, You can add students in here too via email. The key bit that most of you will use a lot is the classwork element. And the classwork element is where you might post some information or some activities or work that would go out to students. So this is one that's being used in a classroom that I'm involved with or as a co-teacher of. And you can put videos that students would watch. You can add documents that students will complete. You can set questions. And as John's going to mention shortly, you can create Google Forms for them to complete assessments. Just to quickly go back to this before we finish, on the front stream, you can see a couple of things here. The first one is that I can upload a photo to make it customized, to make it look like I want it to do. So I can select a photo from my computer, or I can change the theme and select different images and colors for that, and it will change the background that's here. Finally is the Meet link, which is what John's going to talk to you about in terms of the video. This is a very, very handy little tool for students who join a classroom to be able to join it into a video call if you desire that needs to be there. You can turn this on and off as well. But one of the things that's really exciting is that this lives into classroom so that students would only go to one place for their work, one place for their live teaching sessions, and one place to make comments.
Ben, thank you very much. Lots of people commenting about Google Classroom on the stream. Lots of interest in that. And we are going to go through Google Classroom in detail at for 3 p.m. So it's around 2.5 hours time, roughly, and once we take you through the setup. So we are going to have a deep dive and focus on Google Classroom later in the video for anyone that wants to come back into that. But otherwise, Ben, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you later. See you, Ben.
Thank you.
And we also have John joining us. Hi, John.
Hi, everybody. How's everything over there?
I think we're good. I'm going to answer before you start. There's a couple of questions I wanted to answer. And feel free, everybody, to keep asking questions in the stream because I see lots of questions. Someone's asked a question about how secure is Google Drive, and is it safe to put information into Google Drive? So I don't know, John, if you want to answer, or I can answer.
Yeah. Okay. Say then I'll add whatever you say and go ahead with my class. So say something first.
I can answer that first if you want them. So obviously Google Drive is a secure place to store data. It is protected. So there's a high level of data protection around Google Drive, and it's perfectly valid for use for sensitive information. Everybody's Google Drive is protected obviously by their own passwords. So some very simple things would be to keep your passwords secure, not to have it stuck on your device or saved into the phone in any way or the device you're using. So simple password safety rules that we use for everyday life should apply to your Google account, and obviously that keeps your Google Drive nice and secure. If you want an even more secure Google Drive, it's possible to turn on something called two-factor authentication. And two-factor authentication means that once you put your password in, you also then need to have another method of identification, which is usually a text message to your phone, and you put a code in. So you can choose to make your Google, all of your Google documents more secure, and do that through two-factor. But that's a user choice. And obviously, when we're working with younger students, that wouldn't be appropriate because it makes it difficult for them to access. So just want to answer those questions there that people are asking about security in the stream. Thank you to everyone that's asked those. John, I'm going to pop your screen in because you're going to take us through the next part of this. So over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I appreciate the answers that you get to Google about G Drive, and it's very important that you understand that understanding how to keep your password secure is the first level of security that you have on the internet. So whatever it is, from your email address, from your Gmail box, or whatever emails you have to keep your password strong, and make sure that it is not easily detectable. Perhaps you always advise to use strings and letters and words in caps, and lower caps and different caps. And then you must have it more than 8 characters for you to run that, get it secured. So thank you, Andy, for bringing me on, and you've actually done a very good justice to Google Drive. And then the other presenters said a whole lot of things about the applications that are on GSuite and Google Drive. Now, I'm going to start from, I'm going to go back a bit and start from the fact that now you could actually have all this, a whole lot of this information on the Google Teacher Center. If you just go to edu.google.com/teacher center, which is an hyphen, you're going to see this, and that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. And now you see the different menus on top, and then you see product guides, and you can actually see all the applications that we've talked about already today, from Jess to Ben, and you can actually learn more and be able to use them. And then there are other things that you could actually figure out, from certifications, educator level 1 and 2, and programs, and how you want to become a certified trainer, innovator, and all that. And and other resources that are available, including what this is going to be very, very important for a whole lot of people now, about distance learning. You can actually get information about distance learning from the Google Teacher Center. So now I dive into Google Forms. Ben already talked about Google Forms in Sheets. So, and it's very, very interesting for you to understand that Google Forms helps you to build surveys, measure student success, administer quizzes, and more. For educators, it is always kind of like, how do we do assessments? Google Forms is one of the very good way to actually get an assessment done. It's very, very important that you understand that Google Forms is an app dedicated for whatever you want to use to throw out questionnaires to people. And for students, it's a big opportunity for you to be able to use the different kinds of things. You think of the fact that you might have essay questions, you might have multiple choice questions. In fact, right now with Google Forms, you can put in a video for people to analyze and answer. So that's like every other app that Google has. You can actually go into that with just the name and .google.com. So when you click forms.google.com, it's going to take you to this place, and there are already templates that you have. You have different kinds of templates that you could actually use here. I already have some on the drive. So now if you click the blank one, or if you click contact information, to have actually preloaded some things to you. So I'm going to click a blank one, and it gets me to this place. Now the first thing that you do on your Google form is that you make sure that you name it from the upper part and say, okay, you want to assess your student. So now give it a name that will make you to be able to check it out later. And when you have the name, it puts it on top of this place, and then you could actually change this to assessment for, give the long name for kindergarten students. Yeah. So now quickly, then you can give a form description, and with that, you can go into what kind of form that you want to design. Let's take a look at it quickly. You can add questions. This is already by default or on a blank sheet. and then you see it's giving you different kinds of set that you can actually do: short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, check boxes, drop down. Then you can do file uploads. You can download it, linear scale, and all that. One thing that you're going to get to understand later is that you could actually do quiz with Google Forms. So it's not just that you ask questions and make assess, try to like do multiple choice. You can actually turn your form into a quiz for your class. Now you have multiple choice grid and put date and time on it. So now, is this your first relation? Your first relation with Google Forms. Now you check that out, and then you can actually put your options, whatever options that yes. So if you want yes or no, it's actually giving you a sample for that. Then you can actually put no there and yes. So now when you have your forms and you've actually, let me add another one. You could put in a video, like I was saying the other time, add video. So I could look in for a video, teach tool, and you click on that and it's going to give you different kinds of options. Let's see if we kind of like pick one of these and you select it. So you're going to see that's going to show you, and from there you can actually ask your questions, add questions under it. People can actually see it. Then you can put a question at the base. This is so interesting when we go into how Google Forms work. The first thing is that you will want where your responses are going to be. But before I go into the responses, let's go into backend. How do you want people to access it? So they can access it from different points of view. There could be an email. You could send an email and it's put the link there. You could pick up the link. Yeah, you have an opportunity for the shortened URL, and you can actually copy it, and then and you could embed this form inside your website, whatever it is. So you can actually do all of that. And mind you, you could always collect email addresses from when you send your Google Forms. Then there is more to it. In settings, when you go to settings, you're going to have general presentation and quizzes. I was talking about the fact that quizzes by default is turned off. So if you want to make your form a quiz, you have to put it on, turn on, and then and the beauty about quizzes is that by the time you make quizzes, it will give you an opportunity for you to turn your Google Forms into a auto-marked form, such that at the end of the day, when a student completes the question, when you click submit, it's going to auto-mark them. So, and that's going to really give a whole lot of educators some lease of life, basically. So you see all the things that is there, so you can actually check it out. Then I'm going to go into responses. Now, where does the forms, the responses, where does it go to? Now, you could have responses. It says get email notifications or new response. Then this is very critical. Select response destination. Now, inside, because everything goes inside Google Drive, then what that means is that you will be able to find the location for this form for the responses that they are given in Google Drive. So now it could create a default spreadsheet for you, or you could use select an existing spreadsheet. So by the time you do that, you could select an existing spreadsheet, and by the time you select that, it's going to ask you what are the details. So now when you create a new one, you click create, and it will create it automatically in Google Drive, and then you can actually have access to it. So, and then on this place, you see that there are 0 responses because there's no responses, I'm going to go into a form that has been filled already. Yeah, so in this form, we've completed it, we've added a whole lot of things. You can actually see the form, and then there are responses. Now you could actually see that I could quickly see a summary of the responses here, how many people filled it and all that. So yeah, quickly, I'm going to move out of this place. So Google Forms give you a lot of opportunities for you, and you're going to see the different delineation. And then Google Forms saves into Google Sheets. So Google Sheets is a spreadsheet that you could actually use. You see, it's telling me that view responses in Sheets, and it's going to open that up, and then you're going to see the different responses, and you can actually do your further analysis. If you followed what Ben said initially before this time, then you understand that you could actually do your analytics from Google Sheets. So now Google Forms is a go-to for every educator, and you can actually have Google Forms run on your classroom. In fact, it is a vital toolkit inside Classroom. You could actually embed it into Classroom, and you could actually access it when you have Google Forms. It's good. You can a Google Form, by the time you generate it, it's going to give you a link and all that. Now that's about Google Forms. So I'm going to go to Calendar first, then I'll come back to Google Meet because of the time. Now, when you go to calendar.google.com, it's going to take you here. Now, the first thing that you need to understand about Calendar is this. The Calendar is so powerful in its ability for you to be able to arrange or organize either your class schedule, your meetings, whatever it is. Now, it can be used by educators, it can be used by non-educators, everyone. As long as you have a program and you have a time on it, then Calendar is the go-to for you. Immediately you are relating with people, you want to work with people, you want to do an online meeting, you want to do a face-to-face meeting, whatever. So Calendar can help you to do all of that. Now, the first thing you do is that just click create, and then you add a title. Let's assume you want to meet a party. Yeah. Okay. Mind you, maybe I'll use let me use something else like class 1. Yeah, that's the calendar. Now, the beauty about Calendar is this: you about the events, you can actually set reminders, you can do tasks. There's another app by Google called Tasks that you could actually do. Now, I'm going to come back to the fact that you can add a Google Meet link into your Google Calendar. But for you to go on with Google Calendar, now click on more options. When you click on more options, set the date. You can set it to any date that you want in the future. So I'm going to set it to June 10. And what time do you want it to be? Do you want it to be a 1-hour event, or you could actually reduce it to a 30-minute event, and then it's going to start by 1 p.m. Now with this, now you can actually save it. Now I'm going to save it first, and then I'll come back to it. I save it, and you're going to see it on top of I'm coming. You're going to see it somewhere here. Sorry. Okay, I put it to a date in front. So I'm going to pull my calendar. Okay, I'm going to pull my calendar forward. Yes. So now you see that it's on the So if you have questions on Google Forms, I think there are people that are answering it for us there. So I'll get on it too as well. So you can actually ask your questions in the chat window on the screen that you're watching this. So, and then you get the answers. And you can also use the bit.ly.setup QA that we have shared initially for you to be able to get responses to your questions. So going back to this, now you're going to see that my calendar has actually pointed, save this. So I can go back to it and then edit the event. Now, when I edit the event, you see that this was where I was initially. Then add location. You can add location. then set notifications. So how many notifications would you want to set? You can actually set as much as possible. Now, there are default notifications, say 4 days and 1 week. You can actually change this date to minutes, to hours, and all that. So let me add a one more notification to this, and I'm going to make the notification and make it a notification, and I'm going to say that it should send 30 minutes before the time. So 30 minutes before the time. So everyone that's going to be part of the meeting will get a notification 30 minutes before the hour of the meeting starts to their email address. Then you could actually add a description about the this is the class for our SS1 students. Yeah, I'm going to put that. Yeah, cool. So now, who do you want to be in the class? The beauty about Google Calendar is this. Now, if you have a group's email, you can easily, or a class email, in case of GSuite, you will have a class email that has all the list of your class. So you just need just that single email to add to calendar, and immediately, okay, I'm going to invite someone here, I'm going to invite this. So it's the person, it's been there, then it will send the invite. If it's someone outside the platform, yeah, they can still get it to as well. So, and when I send it, then you could share an attachment for Google Calendar, and then yes, I want to share an attachment right now, so I'm going to share this. Select. So, and it's going to ask me when I'm sending it out that okay, then you could actually allow, if you are not the only moderator on the calendar, you can actually, so this could actually be done. Then immediately you click save, it's going to recognize that would you like to send invitation emails to Google Calendar guests? Yes. I say send, then it's going to ask me, it notes that I had an attachment on it, and it's going to say, do you want them to view it or be able to comment or edit it? I want them to be able to view it or just comment on it, then I'll click invite. So with that, you give them the access to, if you don't want them to, you just want them to do, and this is very good if you want your class to have read something beforehand, before they come to the classroom. With the Google Calendar, you can give them the material they're supposed to read through, and then you tell them, meet me in class, and you will have to discuss what you've done. So with that, it makes it very, very possible. One other thing is that you could actually add to your calendars. You can
John,
actually click on this, and all right, go ahead.
Just going to say, there's plenty of time, so feel free to just take us through nice and slowly, because we're getting a bit quick, so everyone can keep up. So there's plenty of time to take us through calendar, and then a brief look at Meet. Okay. Okay.
Yes, definitely. Yes. So you can actually create a calendar, a new calendar that you can put meeting notes on, and that you could actually name it in school, and for school purposes, right? Then you create the calendar. So when you create this calendar, what's going to do for you is this: you would have it. Yeah, it's been created. Then you go back to this bit. You see it on the school. Where is it? Yeah. So with this, you can easily say that if you have so many things in your calendar, you can say display only school calendar. So every of the things here would not show except school. Now, the interesting thing is that I can actually bring the calendar, the event that I shared initially, and then put it on the school. So let's try to see that. Okay. So okay, it was created default here. So I'm going to open this up right now, and I would put it on the just a minute. Okay, yeah, I'm going to put it on the school calendar. So you see, I have a lot of calendars here. So it's going to be under school calendar. And the beauty about this is this: when you have a calendar that could actually, you could share events under, then you people that you want them to, you could have those ones that you're going to work with. You can actually share your calendar and make it public, such that they can actually view your calendar too as well. So that's how it works. Yeah, scroll down. So you see now I said make available to public. So immediately you click it, yeah, making your calendar. So you click OK, and then the people that you give the link to your calendar, so you get a shareable link for your calendar. So I get a shareable link, so I can copy this link and give it. For instance, if teachers are actually working together and they wanted to have like maybe a class calendar for everything on Google Classroom or whatever, you could actually do a calendar and then share the calendar with them, and they will have the access to put in their own classes too. And this will be very, very nice if you're trying to set up classrooms, classes for students in your school. So with that, it makes it very, very straightforward that you're not going to be having clashes, because everybody will see, just like doing the setting out the timetable. So calendar can actually help you to set out the timetable online, and that's the beauty, one of the beauties of calendar. And then I'll go back to calendar now and then do pivot from there to Meet. Yeah, I'm going to go back to my calendar. Yeah, I still have this on. So okay, yeah, it's created too. So I'm going to click this. Then I'm coming to this now. Interestingly, it's already given me a join with Google Meet, and it has given me a Google Meet link. That's the fabulous thing about calendar. In calendar, you don't need to wait for you to create a Google Meet. As long as it's an online event and you have indicated it, it's going to give you a link that you can actually share to, participants. Yeah, because of COVID, there was an extension for Meet for schools under GSuite. So now, but here it's talking about the fact that you can actually share, you can actually have up to 100 participants on your Meet. So now we're going to go to Meet. There's still a whole lot more to calendar, and I believe you will be able to go through that later when you check on calendar.google.com. And the beauty about it is that you can always just go into your Drive and then go in. Okay, on these settings, you'll be able to see calendar there. Yeah, this is calendar, and you can actually click calendar, and from there you can actually start up whatever you want to do, and it could give you views from weeks to months. So if I click months, you see that I have months views, and yes, it's crazy, but you could actually have a year view. So that's the beauty about it. So calendar is awesome. You can't do without it if you're using Classroom. It's very, very key. It's very, very important. You can always use calendar from different perspectives, and that makes it very nice. So I'll move to Google Meet. Yes, now for Google Meet, it's very simple. It's for your video chats. It's for your video meetings. A whole lot of people have actually, because of the unprecedented time that we are, so many people have been able to use different solutions, and Google Meet is one very key solution that is very, very good for your school. It makes it's highly secured, and you'll be able to put things together properly. Google Meet can actually be used on Classroom. Ben talked about that, and immediately you have your Classroom, you can actually have your Google Meet link for your Classroom there. So now, if you are, and which is very, very important, Google Meet can run absolutely, and I can start up a meeting right now. Or if I have a meeting code, if you give your students a meeting code, so if I click start a meeting, it's going to come up, and I don't have so, and then it's going to I'll be able to you scroll down. So it has given me a link already as the one that started the meeting, and I can, this is what I will copy and share with all my participants. Now, if I click join now, then yeah, you're going to see. So it automatically gives me the joining link, and then I can add people from here, and I can also click on this copy joining link and then share it via my email or quite different ways or on other chat platforms and all that. So that's what Google Meet will help you to do. So after you've done that, then you can actually start your meetings. And then with Google Meet, you can actually have your chat bot beside you, and you can add yes to it, and then you could add and see the number of people that and then you can mute all your participants, and then you have the settings. So but I'm going to go into something quickly. So I'm going to get out of this one. Yeah, so I'm going to leave this meeting. Leave this meeting. Yeah, then I'm going to go into a G Suite one. This is very important. If you have a G Suite account, then you can record your meeting. So click it up to start your meeting, or okay, continue. Okay, yeah, I put JT there, then I click continue. So this meet. So now with this, I click, I can present with Meet with G Suite. Then I could actually get join meeting. So now the same thing is applicable. So then if I click on this link, then you see on top of this place, you can actually record your meeting for Google Meet. So at the end of the day, it will record it and it will send it into your Google Drive. And with Google Drive on G Suite, you have unlimited space. So this video will be linked up into your Google Drive, and then you can actually share the meeting. So when you have your classes, you can actually have your classes, and then everything will be recorded, and you can push it. I mean, it will automatically go into Google Drive, and when it gets on Google Drive, you can copy the link. And for those that wouldn't be, were not able to come to the class, you could actually send the link on the Google Drive to them and all that. So now that's the beauty of using G Suite, because you have access to this, and you be able. It's actually not available on the general one, but on the one for G Suite, you could actually access recording with Meet. And then note this: Meet has a a mobile app. So with your mobile app, when you just go to maybe your Android phone or whatever kind of phone you have, or your iOS, you can download Google Meet. Meet will be one of the apps on your mobiles, and people can actually join from their mobiles, and that's pretty cool, because it makes it very easy for people to join. So I've talked about. I was just
going to jump in, John, and give a couple of tips for Google Meet. One of the things I was going to say about because I've seen this in the chat already, and obviously I know you're presenting, so you can't see the chat. If you're using Google Meet, of course, you don't need to necessarily have the camera turned on. And obviously, if you're on your mobile phone, you can save a lot of data by turning the camera off and simply using it as a communication tool. So the example of your screen there, John, you've got your camera turned off, haven't you, right now?
Absolutely.
So you could just use Meet as a communication tool for audio, for voice, or if you're not concerned about your data, you could turn your camera on and obviously use it in that way. So Meet works in both cases. Lots of conversations about that in the chat. Anything more you wanted to say about Meet, John, before we finish?
Just the final thing, with your settings, what Andy just talked about, you could actually find it on settings, and this is where you could set your resolution for what if you need to watch the video, you can actually still set your resolution. So you could actually have a standard definition or a high definition. then yeah, you set that up even for and say audio only. So from settings, all that can actually be done for video, and then for audio and a lot much more. So now it's something that you should assess. Then layouts can actually be changed, because I remember someone was asking me sometimes ago that if you're on Google Meet, can you actually do layouts? So it's possible for you to do layouts changes and all that. Then turn on captions. It's very important that if you're having people that doesn't have or you have an opportunity of really giving it out in different kinds of languages, and captions is going to be really very, very important. So you could actually join Google Meet, a meeting on Google Meet with your phone, audio, and all that. So that's what I have for you on Google Meet. So thank you, Andy, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you very much. And I know
yes.
we're gonna see you a little bit later when you come on to talk about CS first, a bit later on. But for now, thank you for taking us through Google Meet and Google Calendar. And drop you and your screen off. So we'll see John in a little bit. And he's going to come back and talk about CS first in a bit. What we've done in the first part of this video is very much take you through just a bit about each of the tools. So what you've probably seen there, and there's been a lot to take in that first hour, is that there are lots of different tools within G Suite for Education. So whether you're using Classroom, or whether you're using Calendar, or whether you're using Drive or Docs, there's just a range of tools you can use. We're going to move on now in the second part of the webinar to have a look at how is it that you get those tools set up. So how is it that you actually set up those tools? And so we're going to dig into that in a bit more detail now. Don't forget that as we go through this webinar, if you've got any questions at all that you want to ask, you can put that link in on the internet at bit.ly/setupqa, and you can ask questions in there. Myself and Jess and the presenters who are on today, we're answering questions in that document. So if you have other questions that we don't cover as we go through today, feel free to add your questions to the document. Okay, so we're going to focus now on the how do we get set up? How do we register and get access to Google for Education? G Suite for Education is available free of charge for schools. So if you are a school or an educational institution, you can use the Google tools for free. And we're going to take you through that process, and we're going to talk about the registration process in this next section of the video. So we're just going to click through this bit. And linked to that, there is a written version of this. So at that link there, goo.gl/quick start, there is a written version of everything I'm going to go through in this next section of the webinar. So if you feel that you would work better having the written instructions, that link will take you to the written instructions for this section of the webinar. And as we've said before, this video will be available after today. So if you want to, you can load the video up using the same YouTube link that you're on now. And obviously watch a section, press pause, do some practical work, go and do some of your setup, and then watch another section. So feel free to use this video to support you if you're going through the setup process. But I'm going to take you through that process now as it works. So step one is you go to edu.google.com, which is where the page is to sign up for Google for Education. So on my screen here, I'm going to go over to edu.google.com, and I'm going to show you where we go to set up for G Suite for Education. So we go along to Products and then G Suite for Education. And this is where the sign up form is. There's a big button here, which we can see in the middle. Let's zoom our screen a bit bigger so it's nice and clear. There's a big button here in the middle of the screen which says sign up for G Suite, and that's the button you press to then start the process to sign up for G Suite. So this is the sign up for G Suite. Let's make this nice and big. This is the sign up for G Suite page, and this is a series of questions that you need to answer to register your school or educational organization for G Suite to get access to all the tools that we talked about in the first part of this webinar. So click next. And the first thing we need to do is put in the name of our school or organization. So I'm going to put in the Smith School. So the name of your school, and make sure you get the name as the name is officially registered. So if your school has a "the" as part of its name, I put "the" in there. And I've got to describe what sort of institution I am. So in this case, I'm going to be maybe a primary school, but obviously if you're higher education, you can fill that in. This form, as we said, is only for use for educational institutions. So if you're watching this webinar, but you're from a business, not a school, then unfortunately you can't use this form. And we make the products available free for schools. And then click next. And it's asking me for a website. So Google needs to validate that you're an actual school. And one of the easiest ways for us to do this is for us to look at your school website. So ideally, if you've already got a website, you can put the link into that there. Please don't put in links to social media. We can't link just to a Facebook page or to somebody's Twitter feed or their LinkedIn page. It ideally needs to be a school website. So if you've got a school website, the Smith School.sch.uk, whatever your school website might be, you put that in there. And then we ask a question about the numbers of students and staff you've got. As we mentioned earlier, GSuite for Education is available for everybody in your school, and we let you have an unlimited number of accounts. So you can have as many accounts as you want. Just because you put a number in here doesn't affect the number of accounts you can have. But obviously, you need to get this roughly as matching what you've got in your school. So let's say my school here is 100 to 500. So you pick your size of school and press next. And at this point, it's sensed where I am because I'm in the United Kingdom. So it sensed where I am, but we need to put in the country you're in. But I can change that to a drop-down list of countries and find an appropriate country in here. So if I was in Nigeria, I could change it to Nigeria. And then I could put in my phone number and so on and put my details in on this page. So you can enter your details by country and by phone number and put your further details in there. Let me put a UK number in because I know one. Oops. And then we'll put in and press next. Oops. Doesn't want the 0. Press next. I've got to get enough numbers in there. Got to match the numbers. So you go through the phone number. I'm going to move over to my slides. So you go through the website, you go through the questions, and you go through the questions. And the next question it's about to ask me is about the domain I want. So this is the bit that is probably the most technically challenging part of signing up for Google. Because you need to choose a domain, a web address that you're going to use for Google for Education. And that's the address that people, when they sign into Google, are going to sign in with. And really, you have two options at this point. You could, if you've already got a school website, you could use exactly the same web address for your Google for Education accounts. So if you already have a domain name, and you can buy domain names as well for this, but if you already have a domain name, you can use that one. If you don't have a domain name, then at this point in the process, you can choose to buy a domain name. So it's your choice. If you've got a domain name, you can use that. If you don't at this point, you can buy a domain name. If you've already purchased a domain name, maybe your school already has a website and you already have a domain name, then you'll need access to that, and in particular, access to the DNS records to be able to prove to Google that you own that domain name. So just bear that in mind. If somebody else set your website up, maybe you used a company to set your school website up, you'll need to speak to them to get access to that, to be able to validate that you own that domain. Or alternatively, at this point, if you don't, you could buy a domain name during that process. So it's your choice. Google for Education itself as a product is free of charge. So there is no cost for using Google for Education. But obviously, if you need to buy a domain name, that will cost you the cost of the domain name. So most domain names are sort of $10. Some vary depending on the domain you're purchasing in price. but you could buy a domain name as part of that registration process, or you could use one you've already got. If you already have one, then obviously there would be no cost as you go through the process. So just bear that in mind, and that's where you might need some help if you've got somebody who has set up a school website with you, that you might need to speak to them to get access to the domain name. So just bear that in mind. Step 2, as I said, we've already talked about this bit, but you have to verify that you own the domain. And we've placed a link to this, these instructions in our chat, but you can verify that you own the domain name usually by changing the DNS records. And we have instructions for that, and it will very much depend on who you bought your domain off. So on this page here, and there is a link to this in our Q&A doc, all the different people that you might have purchased an internet domain from. So if you purchase your internet domain from AfriHost, for example, quite a popular domain name provider, here are the instructions for how to verify with AfriHost that you own a domain and that Google can use the domain for your GSuite for Education. So the different domain name companies are on this page here. Lots of different companies provide domain names. And again, the instructions for your specific domain are on that page. So if you already own a domain and you know who it's with, you can use this list to access the right instructions for you. And they will vary for everybody probably on the call. So step 1 is filling the information about your school, putting the name, putting the size of the school, putting the domain name you want to use. Step 2 is verify, prove to Google if it's not if it's a domain you already own, that you own that domain. And so as we said, a domain host is the person that you register the domain name with. Step 3, some common questions about this. If you're going to come up with a new domain name, think about how long that domain name is. Because when you come to sign into Google, you have to type the domain name in. If you choose a very long domain name, then all your students will have to type that in to get access to Google. So some schools will shorten their domain name or have an abbreviated version or just the letters in the name. It's up to you to choose. But think about how short it would be. If when you go to register, it says that your domain is already in use, that might be because somebody in your school has already registered for Google for Education. They just haven't told you. In which case, there is a form you can use. And again, we've linked that in our document, in our help document, to remove an account. So we can take back control. So after you have given us the information, the name of your school and your details, and you've given us a domain name for us to use, then your account is turned on. But initially, it's put into a trial mode. And in this period of time, this gives Google time to go and verify that you are a real school. And this can take up to 14 days to complete. So just a word of warning here. Once you fill the form in, we give you access to Google for Education, but only in trial mode. And it could take Google up to 14 days, up to 2 weeks, to go and check that you own the domain, that you are a school, that the school exists and is a real school. And then once that's approved, your domain will be opened up to a full education domain. Most of the time, Google check that you're a school by using the link that you provided to your school website. So that's why I said when we talked about registering for the account, it's best to use a school website, because if you don't give us a link to a website, or you give us a link to a Facebook page, then that makes it more difficult for Google to check that you're a real school. So providing us with a website on that page really helps smooth that process. It makes that process a lot faster. So my advice would be use a school website on the sign up, and then you'll get approved much faster as this goes through. Once you are approved, then all that will happen is you will get access to this. And this is the Google for Education admin console. So once your domain is approved, we will send you an email and we will give you access to the admin console. And the admin console is where you can add all of your students and your users. It's where you can turn on or off the different tools that you want to use. So let's imagine that you want to use Google Classroom. You can turn that on in the admin console. Let's imagine that you don't want to use Google Meet, or maybe you don't want your students to use Google Meet. You can turn that off in the admin console. So This area, the admin console, is where we control the different features and services that are available within Google for Education. So I'm going to now take you across and take you through what that looks like when we're in the admin console in just a moment. I want to say a couple of things first. So once we've got the admin console set up and we've got access, the next thing we need to decide is where are we going to put our users? Are we going to add some users in, add some teachers in, add some students in, and where are we going to put them? So I'll show you this. I'm going to come back to this slide, but I will show you this inside the admin console. So here I am inside an admin console. And when you first get access, the first thing you probably want to do is go over to users here. And I can see all the users that I have in my admin console. We want to add somebody in. You know, you want to add probably to start with other teachers. So when we come to adding a user, this is what we do. You can probably see at the top of the screen there is a button that says add new user. So we go to add new user and it brings up this window with some, I'll just zoom it a bit more so we can see it better. Brings up the add new user window. And there's some information that we have to put into this box to be able to add someone to our school Google for Education domain. So we need to give them a first name. So we'll put in their first name, Andrew, in there. We need to give them a last name. So we'll put in a last name in there. Let's say Andrew Smith. So you have to tell Google someone's first name and last name. And then down here, once you put that in, it will, as you can see, it automatically guessed a username for me. So it said, do you want to have the username Andrew Smith? Because that's available right now. And you could keep that. Or maybe I want to put a dot in there between Andrew and Smith. It's entirely up to you. So it creates the username for the person. And then the only other thing I have to put in there is a password. So further down the page here, I have to put in a password for that person to be able to create them in the system. So the minimum information we need to be able to create a user is their first name, their last name, their email address, but Google could suggest that for you, and a password. In terms of, well, how do I know what to use for a password? Some schools will often use a student's date of birth initially. So I could put in here a student's date of birth to start with. And then I could turn this little button on here, which says ask for password at next sign in. So when my student first signs into Google, they can then change that to a word that they want to use as their password. Because most students know their date of birth. So initially you could say to them, okay, put your name in, put your date of birth in, and when it will ask them to change, they could then change that for their date of birth, or sorry, for their own password. So that's just creating one single user in the admin console. And that's simple enough to do that way. You might see at the top here, there is another option, which is bulk upload users, because if you're from a very big school, let's imagine you have 1,000 students or 100 teachers. You don't want to sit there and type the information in for each one. So you're more likely to use this button, which is bulk upload users. And bulk upload users allows us to upload a spreadsheet file. So a CSV is a particular file format for spreadsheets. And we can put a spreadsheet in and we can upload all our users in one go. That spreadsheet needs exactly the same information that we talked about earlier. So it needs their first name, their last name, their username for Google, what you want that to be, and the password. So it's again, it needs the same amount of information. If you want, on this page here, there is a template. There's a blank template you can use to create the CSV folder to then upload to create all your users. And should you really want to, you can put up to 150,000 users through this method. I wouldn't reckon, I doubt there's anyone on this webinar that's got a school that's that big, but in theory you can. So that's putting our users into the system. The next thing we need to think about is where are those users going to live? And so you may have seen us talk about organizational units. And organizational units are little groups of people that we can create in the system that make it easier for us to be able to manage users in the system. So common organizational units, if we look at my list here, I've got a little example here, are to have different sorts of users in the system. So in this case, you probably want to have different settings for teachers than you do for students. So I would be tempted to create a group that is teachers and a group that is students. And that's quite a common setup for schools, to have at least 2 organizational units, teachers and students. But then within students, you might want to break them down further into smaller groups. So in students, maybe I want groups by age or by class. And that bit's entirely up to you to decide how you want to set that out. So when you're setting up your admin console, think carefully about how you want to group people. My recommendation, and there's some examples on this slide here of some different ways of grouping people. But my recommendation at the very least is to have teachers and students separately. And I think it's good practice for the students to have them into their classes, or at least their year groups or their phases, or whatever the terminology you might use is there, because that makes it a lot easier then when you're trying to turn things on and off. If you decide maybe that teachers are going to use Google Sheets, but maybe students aren't, it's much easier then to turn something on for the teachers and turn something off for the students. So it's always a good idea to think about your structure and to create the groups that you think you're going to need from the start, rather than uploading all the users and then trying to move people around and fix it at that point. So there are some examples here on the screen of different ways in which you can organize them. But the top example there is students and teachers, and then maybe staff and guests. And the bottom one, if you've got a range of schools, maybe you're watching this webinar and you work with 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 schools, whether to break them down by districts and schools underneath that. So lots of different ways there of organizing that, but think that through carefully. Okay, up next. Talking about user accounts, we mentioned this already. And just bear in mind that you want to make a different account for every user. One of the things I've seen people do in the past is to create like one single account for students and have all their students sign in with the same account. But that becomes very messy. The Google Drive gets very messy. No one can find their work because other people's work is in there. So you have an unlimited number of accounts. Google placed no restriction on how many accounts you can have, which means that there is no need to just create one. Create lots of accounts. That's the key thing. Create an account for every teacher that wants to use the system. If you've got students using it, create a separate account for every student. And if you need additional accounts, create additional accounts as well. We used to have, in the school that I used to work in, we used to have our student accounts, and then we had some made up, some fake student accounts that we could use to test. So when we wanted to see what something looked like for a student, we could sign in as a student and see what that was like. And that's good practice to have spare accounts in the system. So that's creating our users. The next point is we've got to think about the passwords. And this might come down to you and your school and the age of the students that you're dealing with. You can have very short passwords if you want. If you want really simple passwords, that's perfectly fine. But at the same time, that might be a security issue for you. So you can also have, if you want, very complex passwords. And as we talked about earlier, when somebody asked the question in the chat, how secure is all this? You can make this as secure as you want it to be. So if you want to be very secure, you can turn on what we call 2-factor authentication. And you can have it where it's not just a password, where maybe when you sign in, you have to get a text message and put a code in. And we can have that level of security if you want it. But it's your choice. And the person with the admin access to the admin console can decide those password rules. And we'll show you that in a little bit. But you think about, as you're getting set up, think about your password setup and your password rules. And then you need to decide what to turn on and off. So which services are you going to use? Are you going to use Calendar that John showed us? Are you going to use Classroom that Ben showed us? Are you going to use some of the other tools? So we're going to dig into that in a little minute, but I'm going to take you through in a second what that looks like in the admin console. So those are the steps. And then once you've got them set up, do you want to customize any of those things? So this is what I'm about to take you through. So let's go over to the admin console. When you first arrive on the admin console, as we said before, it lands on a page that looks like this. There are a series of icons that take us to different areas. So we looked at users earlier on, And over there's the organizational units. If we want to create those groups for teachers and students, that's organizational units. What I want to focus on a bit now is the apps area. And by apps, we mean the tools that Google provide that you can use. So when I click on this button, it gives me a choice. We break them down into two different categories. We have core services, and core services are the main Google apps that people tend to use. And then we have additional services, which are slightly different and contain a wide variety of different apps. So we're going to look at core services first. Within G Suite for Education, within Google for Education, there are these core apps that we can decide to use. And we saw a lot of these earlier. So we have Classroom. We have Google Calendar first on the list. Google Classroom, which we're going to dig into later. So if you want to see a big demonstration of Google Classroom, Lindsay's going to take us through that later. Google Drive and Docs. Gmail, which is our email tool to allow people to be able to email each other. We have Google Meet, our video calling tool that John showed us earlier. Google Vault. And Google Vault is a storage system that saves a copy of everything that takes place in your Google Drive and in your Gmail. And so Google Vault is effectively a backup type tool, but really useful for audit purposes. It's not really there to get copies of things you deleted by accident. It's there to audit. So imagine that you want to find out if a certain teacher did something, or maybe did a teacher email something. We can audit that from Vault. Only administrators, people with access to the admin console that we're in, have access to Vault. Further down the page, we've got things like Hangouts Chat, which is our chat tool, Hangouts Meet, and Google Hangouts, which are our communication tools. And then we've got Jamboard, which is our interactive whiteboard tool, Google Keep for note-taking, Google Sites for building websites, and Google Tasks. So these are all the core apps that live inside Google for Education. And we went through, in the first part of the video, some of these tools. And obviously, you can go through that in your own time and look at those in your own time and watch that video back in your own time. So the next piece then is to talk about what can we change within the tools. So first thing, do we want people to use them? And on the right-hand side here, we can see that these are turned on for everybody. But we also have the ability to turn them off for certain people. And that's why we talked about the organizational units, because the organizational units allow us to turn things on and off for different people. So if we want one group of people to use one tool and not use a different tool, we can do that with our organizational units. So let's have a look at Calendar first. When I click on Calendar, it shows me some of the setting choices I have for Google Calendar. So the first one at the top is very obvious. It says on for everybody. So that's where we turn Calendar on and off. And if I don't want to use Calendar, I can click that and I can turn Calendar off for everybody. So it's a really simple choice. Do we want to use Calendar? But I can also, on the left-hand side here, pick some of my groups and turn it on and off. So I could go down maybe in my school here, and I'd go to my users here, and I'd go to students. And I might decide that actually for students, and it says at the top, showing settings for students, I want to turn Calendar off. So maybe I don't want my students to use Calendar, so I can still turn it off for them at this page. So I just want to be really clear as we go through this piece that Google, you can totally customize these tools for your use. You can totally choose at this point which tools to turn on and which tools to turn off. I'm going to leave it back on again for now and cancel that, because I do want people using Calendar. So I'm going to leave it turned on and then come back a page. Now on that page, there were some other settings for Google Calendar as well. And these are some options that are specific to Google Calendar. So I'll take you through a couple of examples here. Do I want external sharing? Do I want my school to be able to share their calendars with other people? Do I want them to internally be able to check? Can they see each other's calendars? And that's down to you to choose. And so these are big settings that you can change in the admin console. Video calls. Now, if you're going to use Google Meet, which John showed us, you might want to turn video calls on here. But again, you can turn them on and off. So within each of our tools, there are options where you can turn on and off the tools inside the admin console. And that happens in Calendar. One of the most popular tools that we showed you earlier, and we're going to dig into again later, is Google Classroom. And I want to just talk about some of the key settings here for Google Classroom. So when we go onto the Google Classroom page in the admin console, again, we have the on-off button at the top. And down below that, we have the permission settings. So let me take you into the general settings for Classroom. So thinking about Google Classroom, the first question is this teacher permissions. Who can create classes? When you first go to Google Classroom and you very first visit it for the very first time, it will ask you, are you a teacher or are you a student? And you self-identify. You click the button that you are. Once you've done that, Google then knows if you're a teacher or if you're a student, and can then, if you're a teacher, let you make Google Classrooms. One of the key things I would say is it doesn't happen instantly. So there's a slight delay from when you press the I'm a teacher button to being able to create a classroom. It's about 10 minutes in time. So when you very first go to Google Classroom and you press I'm a teacher, you'll have to wait about 10 minutes and then it will let you make classrooms. Somebody asked the question in the chat earlier about this, which is what happens if you got it wrong. If you went there and you pressed I'm a student, when in reality you're a teacher. And of course, once you say you're a student, you can't make classrooms. An admin can come into the admin console here and they can go to the Google Classroom settings. And it says users who claim to be teachers are in this group. And so you can move people around. So if somebody gets it wrong, and somebody asked this question in our chat, if somebody gets it wrong, then we can move them around, we can move them in the groups, and we can change them in the admin console. So most of the time people will get it right. It's not something you have to do very often. But if a teacher accidentally identifies as a student, or a student accidentally identifies as a teacher, you can switch them over here by going into the console. Down below here, it also has Guardian access. And this came up as a question as well, which is, can parents use Google Classroom? So parents themselves can't sign into and use Google Classroom. What they can get is summaries of what's going on there, and that's sent out by email. So if you want to, you can have Google Classroom send parents and guardians emails of what's going on inside Google Classroom. It's entirely your choice whether you use that feature or not, but you turn it on and off in the admin console here. So if that's turned on, then Google Classroom will send emails to parents, and we can add in the email addresses of parents in Google Classroom, and it will send the emails out. If that's turned off because it's a feature you don't need, or maybe your parents don't have email addresses, you can turn that feature off here, and then that feature just doesn't work. So again, your choice whether you turn it on or off and access through the admin console. So that's the general settings for Google Classroom. Then we have some class settings for Google Classroom that we need to think about. So the first questions are, who can join classes in your domain? And by domain, we mean in your school. So who can join your classes in your domain? And we have some choices here. This one at the moment is set to any user, but I can change it. So users in your domain only would mean only students from your school could go into your Google Classrooms. And actually, that's probably the most common setting. Users in whitelisted domains, that means that maybe if your school is part of a group and there are some other schools around who are working with you on access, we can say who those schools are and we can allow those students in. Any GSuite user means anybody with a GSuite account. So by GSuite, we predominantly mean schools and businesses who are using our GSuite account. And then finally at the bottom, any user at all. So it's entirely up to you to decide who are you going to open your Google Classrooms to. But if I had to pick, I'd say the most common setting for this is users in your domain only. Next question is, which classes can your users join? So the students in your school, can they join Google Classrooms from somewhere else in the world? Well, that's up to you to decide again, but you can have it so they can only join classrooms in your school, classrooms in whitelisted domains, so those wider domains, or any GSuite class. Again, the most common setting is to have students only join classrooms in your school. And unless you've got a real reason why students need to join a classroom somewhere else, you're probably going to keep them in your school's Google Classrooms. So that's that section. And then down here at the bottom is the whitelisted domains. So one of the options, as we went through that last section, was classrooms in whitelisted domains. So if you've got two schools who work together very closely, or maybe you're working with a school in the area and your students can access each other's resources, you can choose to whitelist the domains there. Okay, so that's the options for Google Classroom, the settings for Google Classroom. So I'm going to come back now and show you the next. I've just got to save these settings in and cancel that and come back. So the next area then is the next tool in the list. We talked about Google Classroom is Drive and Docs. Again, when we go into this page, are we turning Google Drive and Docs on or off? So you've got that big choice at the top of the page. And underneath that, the other options for Google Drive are around the sharing options. So are we going to, let's kick me back out again. Let me come back in. Now, this will happen every so often in your admin console. The admin console will possibly at various points log you out. And this is deliberate. It's a security feature inside Google that just forces me to cross-check who I am again. And that's to do with the fact that, the admin console's got a lot of sensitive buttons in. So I'm back in now. And I'm coming back through to apps. And I'm coming back into core services. And we were talking about Google Drive. So in Google Drive, we can choose, when we're talking about setting this up for use in a school, we can choose if our different apps are going to be turned on or off. And we can choose if our documents are going to be viewed externally. It's done it again. That's a real problem with Google Drive today. Let's come back one. Give me a moment. I'll just switch again. So I'm going to just give me a second to fix this problem, and then I'll come back to you to talk about Google Drive. So what we mean by sharing externally is, can a user share something outside of their school? So do we want a user sharing something outside of their school? Seems to have totally stopped for a minute, so I'll come back to that in a second. And with Google Drive, we need to decide if that's the case, if that's something we're going to allow them to do. Sharing a document outside the school means they can share it with someone in a different place. Now, frequently what people choose to do at this point is not to do that for students, but to be able to do that for teachers and for other people, because teachers often want to share with other teachers, or they'll hear from a friend who works in another school, they want to share a document. And so for teachers, we probably want the sharing turned on, but for students, have that sharing turned off. And so that's one of the common settings around Google Drive. And that we can choose to do inside the admin console. The next one, the next setting in there is around Gmail. So I'm going to just jump to Gmail in a second. Gmail is our email tool, and it allows people to send emails from each other. It's a web-based email client, and there's probably lots of people on this call right now who at various points have used Gmail or have Gmail accounts. When you sign up for Google for Education, you can have an email account, and that email account can be based on your own email address. So the email addresses that you've created in the admin console, those are the emails you use inside that. So you're using Gmail and the web interface of Gmail, but you're using it in your own with your own email address. And there's quite a lot of schools who, when they use Google, will use Gmail as part of that, but not all schools. And so again, it's your choice to turn it on or off. I'm just going to sign back in to the admin console to give me access to be able to show you these tools. So give me a second and I'll sign back in. Now, while I'm signing back in, now is a good time to ask any questions. So if there are particular questions that you want to ask, feel free to just ask them in the chat over on the right-hand side or at our document. I'm going to just refresh my screen for a second. And I'm going to bring my screen back in again to be able to show you. This should fix the problem with the admin console. There we go. I'm back in now. So this should enable me to share my screen, to show my screen to you better. Okay. So I've come back into Google. I've gone to the little button on the top right-hand side here, and we call that little square box button the waffle button. And I'm going to admin to come back across to the admin console. So we're back in now, sign back in. And as I said earlier, you will find the admin console signs you out quite a bit, which is a security feature if you're not doing anything in the console. So we were in here, we were in apps, and we were talking as far as Gmail. So it's a core app, and it's down here under Gmail. And this takes me into the settings for Gmail. So as I said, you can choose, do you want to have email? Do you want maybe your students to have access to email? Do you want your teachers to have access to email? And again, you turn that on and off in this space. There's also quite a few setting choices with Gmail. It's probably the one area where there's the most number of choices on this page for you to decide some of the features within Gmail. So I'm going to show you just some issues or some features that are relevant for schools. But obviously, each of these headings here on this page that you can see, they all take you through different setting options for Gmail. So the first one I just want to mention is the safety features within Gmail. One of the really nice things about Gmail is that it can help protect users against spam and malicious emails. So Google has a built-in filter that as emails come into Gmail, it tries to do its best to avoid that. And you can play around with these settings here. You can turn these settings on and off. So if I want, I can go into the spoofing here, and I can choose to protect my school against spoofing emails that Google is identifying as spoofing emails. A spoofing email is when someone pretends to be somebody they're not. And so those features are available. So I can choose to make my students and teachers safer by turning that on. And I could do the same internally, and I can do a whole variety of options here to protect my users against spam and things that might be inappropriate coming their way. So one of the advantages of, well, why would I use Gmail over maybe a different email client, is some of these features that Google have built in. So we turn that on and off in the console here, in the security settings of Gmail in the admin console. The other thing we can choose to do from the settings in Gmail, once this loads back in, is we can choose to put in place some filters. So if I come down the page here, of the options in advanced settings here, we can filter emails. And so this lives in advanced settings. And further down the page, we have some options. So we have the options to block people. Maybe if you're receiving lots of emails from an email address, you can choose to block it on that page. You can choose which senders bypass spam. If you're having the reverse issue, maybe your teachers are emailing students and it's been regarded as spam, you can turn the opposite off. And in the compliance area here, we can create rules, so objectionable content rules. So we can put in place filters for our incoming email. If certain words are in those emails, we can automatically delete those emails. So some schools I work with where they might have inappropriate words, they put a list of those words in here, and it's just protecting their users. So particularly if you're going to have young students using Gmail, you might want to think about how can I protect my users. And so digging into some of the settings will help you with that. So that's just a quick look at the settings for Gmail inside the admin console. And again, as I'm going through these, if you have specific questions, don't forget you can drop them in the Q&A doc. Further down the page, now we saw Google Meet earlier, and Google have made some big announcements around Google Meet recently. So you may have seen that particularly as more and more teachers help students by teaching from home, as different areas of the world have gone into lockdown with the current situation. Google have turned on some features in this area. So we saw it earlier with John's demonstration, but people can now record Google Meets. So the ability to record a Google Meet. So that's going on to a Google Meet, which is a video call, and being able to press record, and then having that video file so someone can watch it back again later. So the recording option is here on the settings page. The other option as well, the other feature that happened as Google went through those changes, is the option to stream. And streaming a Google Meet is very much a bit like what we're doing now, because you're watching a streaming. We're in YouTube today because it's the best platform for wide sharing. But if you wanted to share something just with your students and you want to use YouTube, you could go into Google Meet and turn on a stream. And the stream allows the students to watch what's going on in the Google Meet call without necessarily having the interaction of the Google Meet to be able to unmute or ask questions. So they're watching a video feed, much like you're all watching a video feed of me now. So stream is very similar to watching something in YouTube, but only people from in your school can do that. So you could use that for an assembly or an important announcement, or just to send messages to all your students if they're going to watch in real time. That's the stream feature. And again, you can choose to turn Meet on or off in this section here if you're going to use Google Meet. So the Google Meet settings are in this area of the admin console. And then we have further down the page here some other tools predominantly used. Google Jamboard, which we haven't mentioned much about, but it's an interactive whiteboard space. Google Keep, which is our note-taking app. Google Sites, our website building tool. So there's a range of other tools you can choose within the core apps to turn on or off. In terms of those settings, once you've got that set up, obviously when your users sign in, they will then be able to access these tools. So let me just come back one step. I just want to mention some of the additional tools. So those were core apps. We then have additional services. Now, there's a lot of services on this list. This is a very big list of services. And as you can see from this list, some of these tools would be great for students. Things like Google Books is a great tool for students. Google Bookmarks is also useful. Further down the list, things like Google Earth, popular tools for students to use. So there are a range of tools there that are really useful. But some of the tools on that list are more specific for business users. So any of the marketing tools, Google Ads, would probably be turned off for students, and any of the educational tools would be turned on. So you have the option again in there to make those choices around the additional tools. So I just want to mention that's where the panel is for those. So what I've just done there in the last hour is just take you through a little bit of the admin console. We're going to have a quick break for questions, and then we're going to come back and look at the admin console a little bit more for another 30 minutes. But I just wanted to pause at this point and just go over and just take you through some key points as we're reaching the top of the hour. So I'm just going to change my screen over. So give me a second. So if I just remove that from there, and if I then bring my other screen back in. Okay, so I just want to cover a couple of key points because I've taken you through a lot in the last hour to talk about setup. So I wanted to mention a few things. And the first one is this. If you are feeling that this is too much or this is too complicated, there are a range of partners available who can help you with setup. So they're listed on the screen there, and the details are also in the Q&A document. But you can visit these partners, and they will help take you through the setup process. So if you need support and help with setup, at these various organizations, for South Africa, it's Cloud Ed. For West African countries, MKB Consulting. And then for Kenya and East Africa, Power IT. The details are on the screen there. So if you feel that you want some support with which services to turn on and off, uploading users, anything I've talked about in the last hour, that's a really good group of people to work with. They're Google partners, so they work with Google to help set up schools and help schools to set up. So that's certainly worth a visit. Also bear in mind as we go through this, by the way, that we have our Q&A doc at bit.ly/setupqa. So if you've got specific questions you want to ask, you can go over to our Q&A doc and we'll take questions from there. And I know that Jess, my colleague, is going through that and answering some questions. And I'm going to dip in there now as we're at the top of the hour. So I'm going to go on a new blank page and I'm going to type in bit.ly/setupqa, which is the link that loads up the document just to show you what the Q&A document looks like. And you all have access to this. And at the top here, there's a series of links. So a series of resources, some of the things that have been mentioned already in the call, some of the websites that we've talked about. And the contacts are there as well. There's a link back to this video. You're watching this video right now, but if at a later point you need to come back to this video and watch it slowly, you can do that from the link in the document. And then here is the the questions that people have asked so far. I'm going to pick a couple of these to answer, but feel free to continue to add your questions to this document, and we will answer them as we go as we go through this. And once I've finished presenting, I will go back in and answer them. But I wanted to answer some questions now just while we were on the webinar. So someone asked the question, let's zoom in a bit on this. Just zoom this in a bit so we can see a bit better. Okay, somebody asked the question, where is it? I set up a GSuite for education. I set up GSuite for education. I was asked for a credit card. I was asked to pay for a kind of domain. Tried using my card, but it was rejected. Is this correct thing? Was a problem somewhere? You do need to have a domain, as we talked about, to register for Google for Education. So if you don't have a domain, one of the options is to buy one as you go through that process. So the only time you need to put a credit card details in is when you need to buy a domain. So one option there to avoid that is if you've got a domain you can use already, you could come through the sign up without the need to put any credit card details in at all. If you've got a school website domain, you could use that one, and that might help you with that question. I'm just going to try and pick up on some of the questions that have been asked that are relevant to the admin and setup. What could cause no more than 64 people to be admitted to a meet? We have a school birth situation and 164 people in the meet, no others were allowed. Google Meet has access for up to 250 people in a meet call. So in theory, it should allow up to 250 people to come in at once. And that's gone up from 100. So I can't imagine why it would hit a limit of 64 people. So I would say two things to that. Sometimes if you share a link and everyone hits it exactly the same time, you get a clash on a link. So people might need to come slightly staggered coming into the meet, might be an option. And then if that still doesn't work, you probably need to open a support ticket with Google. And I'm going to show you that in a second. So some of these questions, if there's a real technical problem, you can open a support ticket or open a call or a chat window and talk to someone at Google about that. So that could be one where you need to open a support ticket. And I'll show you that in just a second. I'm going to just, what if the school doesn't have a website? So that's a really good question. If you're going through setup and the school does not have a website, what can you do? Well, obviously you can't answer the website question. We then need to validate your school exists in a different way. So if there's a link to anything else you could put in there, whether there's a ministry website that lists all the schools. So maybe your local town or the ministry in your country has got a list of schools and your school is very clearly on there, then that could be a way of us validating that your school exists. So the best thing is a school website. If you haven't got that, is there another source of information that we could use to validate that your school exists? I'm just going to look down there. I'm trying to pick some specific ones to be set up. That's why how many users can you have on the admin console? That's a really nice question there. Someone's answered it as unlimited. You can have an unlimited number of users on the admin console, but obviously you don't need large numbers. Not every teacher needs access to all the settings. And the risk of having lots of people on the admin console is people turning things on and off all the time. So I would say that you want to have who you think is relevant on there, but minimum would be 2. Don't have it as one person because that's risky if someone happens to that person or they forget the password. Then I would say that could be an issue. So I would say a minimum of 2 in answer to that question. Question below that, is it a must for all students to have an email address as earlier asked? When you sign into Google, when you get to the sign in page, when you go to google.com and you press sign in, you have to sign in with what is an email address. Now, it's up to you whether they actually have Gmail turned on. So whether that email address can actually send any emails or not is entirely up to you. So although they are signing in with, andrew@myschool.com or whatever their email is, it is up to you whether you turn on the email function or not. And if Gmail is turned off for students, although they're signing in with an email address, they won't be able to send any emails. So there's that question answered for you. Going to do a couple more questions and then we'll get back on with showing you some more admin console. Someone's asked, can a non-profit organization for education be able to set up a Google for Education account? There is something called GSuite for non-profits. So obviously we're focusing on Google for Education today, but there is a GSuite for non-profits and you could register for GSuite for non-profits. And there are some differences because G Suite for Nonprofits has some different features turned on and off because it's not set up for schools, but you have access to all the tools. And G Suites for Nonprofits do have access to Google Classroom. So they have access to Google Classroom and therefore can use the Classroom tool. Linked probably to that, our government's ever eligible for G Suite for Education. It's any registered educational organisation. So if you are a ministry, you can register at that level. So if you're measuring across the ministry, that could be the level you register at, or it could be individual schools or districts. It varies. But if it's an educational organisation, yes, it fits. So I've picked out some of the answers there, and we will come back to the question and answer doc later in the webinar. So if you've got other questions that you want answering, feel free to come over to the Q&A doc and pop them in the webinar. We're going to go back now, and I've got about sort of 20 minutes more just to take you through some more features in the admin console. So thank you for your questions so far. Oh, I better just switch the windows again, and I'll come back to take you through some of the other features in the admin console. So if we just change my window over, and I can show you the admin console. Okay, so here we are in the admin console again, back at the home page. We've talked about users, we've talked about apps. What I wanted to talk about next was a little bit about security and reports. So security. We talked earlier that you can choose how secure or insecure you want your platform to be. So this is where you come to set the different rules around passwords and password management. So this is the point where I can come and choose, do I want my users to have a certain length password? So do I want them to, do I want to enforce a strong password? Do I want to create some sort of length of password? And when do I want them to change it if I'm changing that rule? You know your students. If you're working with younger students, you might want to have the younger students with shorter passwords. So you'll notice that on the security page, on the left-hand side here, we have an option to do this by the different groups. So by my organizational units. So if I want just my students to have a shorter password, I can do that there. If I want my students to have long passwords to be very secure, I can also set that there. So it's your choice. But this in the security settings area is where you can make changes to the password strength. Now, obviously, if you change the rules, let's imagine I suddenly decide that I want to have strong passwords in. I then need to decide, well, when do I want that change to take place? And if I tick this box, it could be the next time someone signs in. So if you go and increase the security on your passwords, people might need to change their passwords. Next time they sign in, it will ask them for that. And this is where you can also set the decision around whether you're going to expire passwords or not. There's lots of different discussions around this. You know, do you want your passwords to need to be changed after so many days? And some schools will ask their users to change their passwords once a term or once a year, or you choose, or never. And you can have that totally on never expires. And if you have it on never expires, then they can use the same password all the time. So again, it's your choice in the admin console to decide on the password settings. So that there is some of the security settings. Just coming back up, show you a couple of other features. Back on the admin page again. The next thing you might want to think about as you're thinking about setting up, or sorry, once you are set up, is some of the information on company profile. It's called company profile, but what we really mean is your school information, because it's never been renamed to say school. So on this page, you can set some settings. So the first one, and this is quite an important one, is on the profile page. This is where you choose some big things. So what's the name of your organization? Now, this will by default be the name of the school you gave us when you signed up. So you might need to change that. What sort of organization you are. So again, you can select your school type here. Who the main administrator is. So what the admin account is, you can put that information on there. And do they want to have a secondary email address in case they forget their password or they have an issue with the first account? You can put a secondary address there. So this is the big sort of information. And then as we come down the page, these are some crucial pieces. So what language do you want Google to load into? The Google for Education is available in a range of languages. And you can choose from this list here just from the range of different options. So if your students would be better in a different language, this is where you make the change. And once you change it here, it changes for all the users in your organization. So think about what the best language is and make those changes on that page there. Also the time zone. So I'm based in the UK, so I've got this on UK, but you can set your time zone here, and that sets the time zone for, again, all your users in your school or organization, so they're in the right time zone, and it makes the calendars work properly. Finally, this area here, new user features. So Google are improving the products all the time. They make changes based on feedback from users. So across all of the Google products, you have the option to give Google some feedback. Maybe you're using Google Docs and you think it'd be so much better if Google Docs did something. You can put that feedback into Google. And Google look at all the feedback they get, and based on that feedback, they bring out new features. And here from the admin console, I can click this button here and I can see the release calendar. So this is the features that are coming soon or have just come to G Suite. So all the time, the product improves, it gets better, new features come out. And this is where I can see them. So as I look down this list, we can see that, let's have a look for some. So there are new quick settings to help me optimize my Gmail layout. So there are some new features here coming to Gmail to help me change where things are on the screen in Gmail. This is a new feature. And at the top of the page here, I can see that's coming on the 26th of, what week am I in here? I'm in a week in May still. It's already come to those people. Gone backwards in time. I'm still in May. Let's come to more relevant. But that came on the 26th of May. And at that point, you can see very clearly here, that was a rapid release feature. So there are two choices. Over here in the admin console, we can choose to be what we call rapid release, which means we get the new features first, or we can be schedule released and we get the new features usually about 2 weeks after rapid release. And so schedule release gives you a bit of time to think about something changing, and you can let your students know if it's a big change before it comes in. So it's entirely your choice. But what that means is that Google bring out something new. How soon do you want it to come? If you're on rapid release, it's going to come nice and quickly. If you're on schedule release, it's going to come a bit slower once it's been released. But ultimately, as those changes take place, everybody gets them. So because Google is a cloud-based tool, because we're going onto the internet and we're using this on the web, Google can make changes without us having to change things or download things. It's an instant change inside the product. So when Google bring out a new feature, that new feature comes out to everyone that's using it. So it's not a matter of having to update things or download things to update. It's simply a matter of the tool will update as the feature comes out. And so what's coming new is on this page. And again, if you're very interested in that, this is the update calendar. And if we go to a bit closer, let's have a look for somewhere around today. We can see what day we're on here. We're on the 4th. Nothing for today scheduled. But yesterday, Google Voice, which is our calling tool, came to Gmail. And there was an update around security hubs for people using iOS devices. So we've got lots of different new features coming in here. On the 1st of this week, interestingly, the start of June, Google Docs assisted writing features came to G Suite for Education. So assisted writing features is the ability for Google to predict what you're writing and help you write documents in Google Docs. And that came out to the rapid release schools on Monday this week. So they've got that feature now. And probably in around 2 weeks' time, if we look ahead, so that was Monday the 1st. Let's go next week and the week after. We're not seeing it yet. Maybe it's the week after that. But that will come to the standard domains. So at some point, we should be able to find that in the calendar, come into the rest of the domains. So just to be aware, the new features come all the time, which is a really nice feature of Google. But you turn them on, sorry, you access how quickly you get them in the admin console here on the information page. And then also down this page, further down the page of the company profile page is personalization. By default, when you sign into Google, you see the Google logo, the Google logo there that's on the screen. But you can change that if you want to your school logo. So as you're setting up Google for Education, if you would rather have your school icon, or maybe you've got a school badge or a particular image that's relevant for your school, you can add that custom logo in here, and that will load up on the top of the screen in place of where we normally see the Google logo within G Suite. So it is useful, actually, because particularly if you're using multiple accounts, you can remember which account you're in. So we can change that again in the admin console under company profile. So that was the company profile area. And then just coming back out again to the admin console homepage as I take you through the features of the admin console. I just want to mention reports. So in the reports area, you can see, I'll come into reports in this way, the highlight area, I can see how much my users are using the tools. So report tells me how much are my users using, in this case, is it Gmail or Google Drive or Google Hangouts, or in this case, Calendar or Google Classroom. So it's giving me, as the person who's looking after the school, the information of different number of users. Now, this account I'm in here, by the way, is a test account. It's not a real school. You would probably see much higher numbers, I would imagine, if you're in a school. At least we'd hope so. But here I can see the weekly active users. And so that's thinking about, in a particular week, how many people are using Google Classroom. So in that particular week there in January, there were only 13 people in my school using Google Classroom. So the reporting area is a really nice way of finding out what are your teachers using, what are your students using, and is there any particular way in which we can sort of, help them with their use, or maybe they don't know how to use Classroom very well, or maybe they need some more training around Google Drive. And so we can sort of identify those from the reporting area here. So the reporting area tells us how much are people using the tools that you've given them access to. And so it looks at weekly averages. Have they used it within the last 7 days? And so that's the reporting area. And then again, we've got some other information there, how much file storage is in there. Interestingly, around the storage, Google G Suite for Education accounts have unlimited file storage inside Google Drive. So you can put as many files as you want in Google Drive. If you ever used a personal Google account, like a Gmail account, you know that they have limits. You can only put so much in and then you have to pay for storage. On a Google for Education account, you have unlimited storage for free inside Google Drive. And again, you can see how much space you're taking up here on this page in the reports area. So that's the reporting area. It just gives you access to some of the reports, some of the information, what's going on in your domain under reports in that space. And then the last thing I want to talk about today, before I hand over to John, who's going to take us through CS first, is the rules area. And just want to mention this. We can create inside the admin console various security rules. So we can decide who has access to different things. And if we want our system to be more secure, we can make certain pieces of data more secure. So what do I mean by that? Let's give you an example. If I go into my Drive DLP rules here, I can set rules around certain types of information that might be saved inside my Google Drive. So if I go over to templates, there are some examples here. But a good example of that might be, let's say, credit card numbers. Now, admittedly, a school might not have lots of credit card numbers, but if I was to turn this rule on here, I can prevent any spreadsheet with a credit card number from being downloaded, from being copied and pasted, from being shared. So I'm locking that data into my system and stopping it from escaping out the system. So we can do that with details like that. We can do it around personal data. We can do it if you wanted to have, if you had student data in the system, again, you could lock that down using the rules. So the rules is really nice, little advanced feature. It lives in there to help you be more secure with your data inside Google. So hopefully what I've done there is take you through some of the common settings for schools in the admin console. And I hope you found that piece useful. I just want to mention about some sources of information where you might go to for help and support. So I'm going to just change my screen back over again to give you some of the sources of support. Where's that gone? Give me a second. I've lost a window. Give you some of the support places you could go to. And then we'll do some questions before I hand over to John at the end. Okay. So I just want to mention a few different areas and different places you might go. So about that way. Give me a second to go back a few things. So Google have a range of websites that would help you with setting up and with getting support on using Google. This one is called Teach from Home. As more and more teachers have been forced to stay at home with the various lockdowns that are taking place in different parts of the world, Google recognized the need for more support for teachers. So the Teach from Home site, which is available at teachfromhome.google.com. Teachfromhome.google, that's the web address, teachfromhome.google. That website, there it is there. That website is focused on teachers and gives you advice on teaching using the tools. So if you want to know more about teaching using Google Meet and Google Classroom, that website's a really good starting place, and it's aimed at people who haven't seen those tools before. So that's the Teach from Home website. It's worth a look. Secondly, for teachers who are new to Google, and John mentioned this earlier, we have the Google for Education Teacher Center. And within the Teacher Center, there are some guides, some written guides called First Day Of. So there's a first day of Google Classroom, there's a first day of Google Docs, there's a first day of Google Meet. And those are really nice sort of guides if you're new to the tools. So I know we're going to cover the tools and we're going to go through Classroom in a little bit with Lindsay. But if you want to, if you prefer to move slowly, to take things in your own time, the first day content in the Teacher Center is well worth looking out for. So the link for that is g.co/Teacher Center. Lots of resources there. Again, both of these two resources, the Teach from Home and the Teacher Center, are aimed at teachers who are going to use the products with students to teach them. We also have an email that you can sign up for called Getting Started with Google for Education. So let's imagine that you are watching this right now and you think, well, I know how to set up the admin console, but what about my teachers? How are my teachers going to learn how to use Google? And one of the things you could do is get them to sign up for this email. If you sign up for the email, what happens is each week you get an email. It's got some training content, some information in there about how to use different Google products. So there's an example on the screen there of what one looks like, but it's teaching you how to use Google Drive and Google Sheets and Docs and Slides and Classroom. It contains short videos that take you through step by step how to use the tools, and it's available there for you to watch. And so obviously over the 8 weeks, you get an email each week for 8 weeks, and it takes you through how to use Google effectively if you're using it in a school or educational organization. So if you're watching this webinar, I would recommend it'd be a good idea to sign up for those emails. And we've dropped the link, or we will drop the link for that in the chat, so you can sign up there for the emails. And we mentioned the Teacher Center already, but the Teacher Center has a couple of different things going on there. It has online training, but it also has our certification. And I saw a question about this in the document, so I'll show you that in a second. But there is the option for certification if you're a teacher and you want to be certified in Google. That's something you could choose to do, and we'll mention that because I know there's a question coming up on that. So those are some of the resources available to support teachers who are using Google. Don't forget, you can continue to add questions to our Q&A doc at bit.ly/setupqa. I'm going to jump back across now and answer a couple more questions before I finish my slot, because there was some further down the page. I answered some earlier. So question there from Hilliard from Kenya. Once I create GSuite for school for free, it needs to be renewed at the end of the year. No. Once you've created it, it basically is there forever, or until you delete it or close it down. But there is no need to go through a renewal process. It stays live. It stays active. There's nothing you need to do on Google's end to keep that domain operational. So that answers that question there. Somebody asked an earlier question. I was trying to find the one. Somebody asked about the certifications. I'm trying to find the question now. Here we go. What about Google for Education certifications? Is there an advantage to being Google Certified Educator? Are there opportunities to work with for Google and Google partners and partner schools? So actually, interestingly, everybody who's on the call today was a teacher. So I was a teacher in a school. Jess, who's joining us, was a teacher. John is. Lindsay, who's coming up later. We were all worked in schools at some point. And then at various points went through the certifications. So I did my Google Certified Educator Level 1 and my Level 2. And then I became a trainer. to enable me to do what I do now. So I think the simple answer to that is yes, there is. Jess has already popped the links in there, but over in the Teacher Centre, you can find out information here about the level 1 and level 2 certifications. So my advice is that you can choose to take an exam to become level 1 certified. It's an online exam. You sign in and you do prove your competency in using Google. But I would say before you do that, get competent in using Google. So before you do that, go over on the Teacher Centre to the training courses and make sure you've gone through. This is the training course for level 1, 13 units. Make sure you've gone through, press start training, and it takes you through the training. So don't go straight for the exam having not revised. We wouldn't ask our students to go and take an exam if we hadn't taught them some content first. So go to Teach Centre, go through the content that way, and then if you want to take the exam, become certified. So hopefully that's answered the question about certification. There was can a group of schools comprising primary, secondary, and post-secondary set up G Suite for accounts for each of them, or the group of schools must stick to one? No, you could have a separate G Suite account for each of them. So the answer to that question, thank you, question 30, was no, you could have a G Suite for Education account for the primary, different accounts for the secondary, different account for the post-secondary. That's perfectly fine. What you might want to do, and we talked about this when we went through the admin console, is whitelist those accounts so that they can share information, or at least the teachers can share information between the different parts of the organization. So if you are going with separate accounts for the 3 separate schools or 3 separate parts of the school, whitelist them so that they can interact with each other. So I hope that has answered that question. What is the cost for G Suite for University from Malawi? G Suite, one of the options when we signed up, G Suite for Education is free for all education institutions. And you probably saw that higher education was one of the options. And so that was on the drop down. There are some slight differences in the settings for higher education, which is why we asked the question. And I suppose someone's going to ask what the differences are now. In a higher education establishment, we allow students to reset their passwords, whereas in a school setup, students can't reset, only the admin can reset passwords. So there are some little differences between the setup of the 2 different organizations, because obviously higher education's got older students. Someone's answered how many emails can we have? It's unlimited. I'm going to try and pick any other questions out of here that might be relevant just to be set up. For a follow-up question on the G Suite for Education versus G Suite nonprofits. Does G Suite nonprofits have all the apps tools? It does have the majority of apps, including Meet. Google Meet's recording was at the moment, everybody can record Google Meet as a response to COVID-19. That doesn't mean that the recording will be available forever in Google Meet at the moment, and Google have not made further statements on that yet. But just bear in mind that that was the recording in Google Meet was a response to COVID-19, and Google gave that out as a response to COVID-19. So it's currently available, is what I would say to that. Apart from an email, what other ways can students specifically join the class? If you're talking about Google Classroom, you can join with the code, but Lindsay will talk about that in a bit more detail later. So I'd say for that piece, refer to the code, but everyone has to sign into Google with an email address. So we'll come back again to the Q&A doc later, and I'll answer some of the questions. I've tried to pick the questions there that related to the bit that I've talked about, but we'll come back later to talk about some of those sections. So we're going to just jump back through my slides a second, lots of slides in, to move into the next section of our presentation. And so we've taken you through the setup. Now we're going to take you through some of the popular tools that are used in schools. So I know in the first part, we showed you some things very, very briefly, but that was very short and very quick. We're going to go into a lot more detail now in this part of the webinar around 3 of the tools. So John's going to take us through CS first, coming up first. And then Lindsay's going to take us through Google Classroom. And then finally, John will come back and we'll talk about applied digital skills. But in the meantime, while that's going on, we'll also do questions as well. So just check that John is still around. Hi, John.
Yes.
Hello, John.
Hi.
Are you okay?
I'm good. I hope you're just doing great, and I enjoy the presentation that you had.
Thank you. And of course, if anyone has any questions about anything I've covered, feel free to drop back in and ask questions in the document, and I will go over to the document now and answer some more questions. But John, we're going to hand over to you now to talk about CS first.
Yes, thank you very much, Andy. So to start up with, okay, you can see my cap. So this is CS First, and I'm actually bringing you a whole lot of information about CS First. It's a wonderful program, and so I'm going to remove it right now so that I'll be able to talk to you, see my face clearly. Yeah, you'll see my screen, and I think I have to perhaps maybe expand it a bit more so that it's very, very clear. Uh, for you to access CS First, okay, before I say that, CS First means computer science first. Now, Google is first an IT company, so and you'll find a whole lot of coders, programmers, developers that are actually making things happen from Google, and that's why we're able to have a whole lot of developments within the organization. And going to the future, they believe that the only way to make sure that they get stronger and better is by developing or giving people the opportunity to build their skills in programming and in computer science from the young age. And that's why you have CS First. CS First is computer science first, and teachers that taking computer science from the primary to the elementary school to secondary schools and all that are the ones that have actually come together to build on the Google CS First projects. And CS First works in such a way that you turn your IT classes online, and then it becomes fully hands-on. CS First is very, very interesting in the sense that now it makes the classes really, really hands-on, and your kids can actually get the beginner's approach and even to some level of advanced going through CS First. So right now you're seeing on the screen the first page. Okay, this is the about page of CS First. If you want to access CS First, you're going to go to g.co/CS First. g.co/CS First. And that's the link. You can actually go there right now. You'll be able to see where I am right now. It's the default page is the curriculum page, but I start from the about page so that I'll be able to explain some bits of things for you. So going back, the analysis I've actually given to you already, CSS is powered by Scratch. The underlying application for running CS First is the Scratch programming language. It's a block-based programming language developed at the MIT Media Lab, and they have the Scratch Foundation that manages it. And the beauty about CS First is that it helps people to start to learn from beginners level of coding, and then from there it goes forward. Now you're going to see more of that as we move forward. So what I'm going to do right now is this. Okay, there's already a sign in here, but if you click on the sign in on the left hand, on the right hand side, you're going to be able to sign in either as a teacher. Now you're going to have this either as a teacher or as a student. So if you're listening to us right now, you'd relatively be the teacher, and you would set up the CS First class. So when you set up the CS First class, you're going to have something like this. Okay, if you're signing in for the very first time, it's going to give you quite a number of questions for you to answer. You talk about your email preferences, you talk about the language. So relatively CS First, because Scratch is also runs in a whole lot of languages. So CS First too at the affordance. So it's going to ask you some of these questions that I'm scrolling down right now, so that don't be bothered about to just give your response, and then you dive into it. Now, when you get into your dashboard, when you have logged into CS First, you're going to see something like this. If like you're seeing on my screen, on my dashboard, you're seeing the lessons of the classes that I have created as a teacher. Now, if you want to create a class, you just click on this link, and then you create your class, and you can actually name your class whatever it is that you want it to be. For instance, we are in class right now. I can say COVID coding. Never mind, I'm using COVID coding. So you can pick any color that you want here. So I'm going to pick purple. So I create it. So you're going to see that pop up shortly. And these are some of the classes I've actually created. So I already have this class created. But now there's something I was supposed to show you initially, that I wanted to do this first before I actually show it to you, is the fact that when you have the class, it's like you have a room. And then what do you have in the room for your students? Just like if you are going to teach them a coding, you can actually pick up any kind of like a setting. You have your class plan, you have the learning outcomes and all that. So for Google, for CS First, you have an opportunity of getting adding activities that have been predefined, prearranged for your class. So you click on add activities, and to take you to the various curriculum that has been designed on CS First. Now you could actually see here that we have 1 hour activities. Then you could also have there was an hour of code that were done, and that could be between 1 and 2 hours. That, you know, like you have the adventure on ICs and all that. That was designed by some teachers. Then you have the multi-day activities. For instance, if you want to span the learning over a period of time, say over weeks, some of you could actually adapt this into your CS class directly, and then you will the learners can actually go through the different kind of levels of computer science, concepts in computer science with this. So now on the multi-day activities, averagely it runs from 9 hours to 12 hours, depending on 8 hours to 12 hours. So you have the storytelling, we have the music and sound, and that's the introductory level, and you have the intermediate and the advanced. So I'm going to pick something on the intermediate. So I'm going to pick art. So I'll add this to the class that has been created initially. And when it gets added to the class that's been created initially, so I could also do this. So I'm going to move that into this space. I already had a class open. So you could actually have multiple classes set up on your CSFX platform. Yeah, I'm picking art. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to pick arts. So I'm going to add art to my class too as well. It's going to ask a question. So it has notice that I have several classes here, and then it wants me to select which class I want that activity to show on. So I'm going to pick COVID coding. Then I'm going to add to class. So remember, if you have questions about this, you can actually post it to the chat. Andy and Jess are on there, and I could actually join them later afterwards to answer your questions about CS First. So it's actually there. Do you want printed materials, or you want to order a free kit? Yeah, the beauty about it is that you could actually have access to free kit, but we don't presently have. Well, that might change very soon, or through the Google team in Nigeria, or in Africa rather. yeah, you could have, kits that are sent to you, which are free to people in the students or schools in the United States. But here you could have access to the printing materials online, and I will show you that later. So I've set out the activity, the activity called art into the classroom into the class that I just created, and you can see art here. So I'm going to move in the next 10 minutes. I'm going to move pretty fast with this, and I want you to follow up with me. I'm going to go into the class, but instead of going into it as a teacher, I want to go into it as a student so that you see what your student is going to experience. And I'm going to come back. But before you do that, as a teacher, you have access to the class code that you can actually share with your students. For CS First, the students don't need an email address to participate in the class. They don't need an email address. They just need your class code for them to access it. So you give them the class code and you give them the link. They'll go to g.co/CS First, and then they'll put in their class code and they're good. Immediately they just click. You're going to see how it's going to be done shortly. But so I'll come back to this place, but let me go to what the students will see and what they'll be able to do. So I will just try something quickly. So I'm going to move out of this place. I'm going to sign out. Yeah. Oh. Sorry. Okay. Good. Yeah. So I've copied the link, the class code. So sign in. So I'm going to sign in as a student. So everybody's going to see how a student is going to view what they have there. So for a new student, they will need to put the class code. But for a returning student, they would have had a username and password. So let's go to new students first. So this is the class code. It's a 6-character code. It's juggled together, and I click next. So, oh, okay, it gives me webinar 001. Yes, so the student can actually join here. Then you go ahead and you have this. Do you need a new CS First user password? Yes, you click yes when you're just doing it for the very first time. So now you have the username here. You copy it out. Make sure that you keep it saved somewhere so that as a student, that's what you tell your students. They keep it saved somewhere, and then the password, they keep it saved somewhere too. Actually, you can actually give them an online sheet for them to be able to copy it out. The essence of it is that they should not forget this, because that's what they will use to log in back later on after they have finished the session and they want to come back. So now I'll click on this. So after I have this, it's going to come on. Yes, so it's coming on. So this is what the students will see for webinar 001. I created an account like that, and they already have a class activity called fashion and design there. So when the students access this, they are going to go into the activity. So they just click on the activity. Yeah, so because you are the one giving the student the code, they would have seen the class already loaded for them, and they can actually go directly into the link for the activity for the class. So now for fashion and design is a multi-day activity, and it has 8 activities under it. So you see it start with the fashion story, then fashion walk, ultimate stylist, and you scroll down to 8. So there you can give this activity to them in different proportion of time. They can actually have like an hour or two on this, and then they can have it over a couple of weeks. Or if you have a timeline within a period of time, you could actually have 2 periods for them to be able to go through it. Fine, then that means they can complete like 2 activities per week. It depends on how you want to do it, but there's a whole lot of flexibility to it. It's an on-demand course. It's you could actually have access to it as at any time you really want to. So as long as they've logged into it, they can always do complete whatever they want to do. So now it starts with you click start, or you click the first number 1, and it opens up, and they will see a video. Now, the understanding of how CSV operates is such that it will run a video tutorial, and give the students the task for them to complete. So now this is required. They'll have to fill the form, now submit. So if they go through the video and submit, yeah, it's going to take them to, and on each of the video, they are very small, they're short videos. You could download it. So there's a download available, and you could download it to for them to be able to listen to it. So in a classroom, for instance, and perhaps you have a limitation of internet connection or bandwidth, then the teacher can actually download these videos and then share amidst the students locally, perhaps through your local network or something, or maybe you'll be able to use a pen drive and all that. So, but invariably, you could actually download it and they can rewatch it. So instead of them using the data continually every time they want to watch it over, they can actually download it and go over it on their system. So now, if they have actually done this, then it could actually be toggled, sound. They could go back and go through it over it again. Then you click next. Now, this is where it all gets really fun and interesting. Now, it gives instructions when you get to where you need to start. The student needs to start to work on the codes. It will give instructions after they've actually watched the video. You say, open the Fashion Story Starter project, link next to this video, click remix, sign in using your username. So now this is the link. So I'm going to click on it right now, and it's going to go into the online Scratch editor. Scratch is a wonderful program that you could actually access and do things online and offline. Now, this is the online one that is attached to Google CS first. And then with the previous sign-in details for the students, you'll have to put in the information. Yeah, they have the sign-in information added to it. Yeah. Okay, I'm going. Yeah, so when that is at the signing, now when the student signs in, automatically it creates a folder, an online folder on Scratch. Scratch has it's a free and open software that students could and that's a community that students can actually access and work on. So now automatically this is what gets done. Immediately they put in their username and password. Because of the fact that it's in CSS, it creates their portal for them. And then since it's a project that has been requested to be remixed, so you will see the remix button. So let me expand that so that you see that. So you see the remix button on top of the page, and you can actually click on the remix. Yeah, so the student will have to click on the remix for them to start. Now, the beauty about Scratch is this. Scratch helps, facilitates collaboration. it facilitates continual development and growth. And that means that in Scratch, you are not expected to, when you finish a project, other people, and you post it on the community, other students and every other person that comes to the community can actually remix your project and build it further. So that gives lends credence to collaboration, and that's the remix factor, that the remix button that you can see there. So now they click remix, and when they click remix, it assigns that project to the students, and then they can actually start to do what is required. Now, if the student has actually remixed, yes, let me see if we have, if we have some of the, okay, good. Now you're seeing what is on the screen. So let's quickly try one more project. I'm looking at the time already, and I want to try that so that you see, and you can actually show it to your younger folks how it gets done, and the students can actually come on and be able to do it. So now, interestingly, this is supposed to do choose a story prompt, select the Android sprite, and look to menu and drag a say block. So now it's going to I'll drag it forward, and it's going to show us something. Yes, it's going to show us something. Okay, we're going to see how the different blocks are. So it wants to put the say block in, and so yes, you could actually go there. Yes, so this is the sprite. The sprite must be, instead of you having the object, you leave it with the Android sprite. Then you drag in the say block. So when you have the say block there, then you could also and the next thing that it requires them to do. So I'm looking at this that's been implemented. Then you see when flag clicked, that's an event block. You drop it there, and then you could say, it says you could actually say, if I could rest anywhere I wanted, I would. Yeah, so you put, if I could dress any way I wanted. So I would ... So now you could actually move your blocks. Is because I'm working on a wider screen, so I could reduce it a bit so that, yeah, it will fit in. So now for Scratch, look at this flag. It corresponds with this flag here. So that means that if this is clicked, then the sprite or the character inside would do what is required to do. Woo! We've just done a code. We've just written our first code. So that is how simple Scratch makes coding to be for the students. So, and it's been done in such a way that it makes it very, very interesting for the students to relate with, and for them to be able to do a whole lot of things. Now, remember that this is a fashion story. So we've regularly used this in a whole lot of classes, and then the students have actually been wowed by the fact that this is really, really possible. So doing Scratch, learning coding, teaching coding, it's made possible with the CSS curriculum, and this is what you have. And at the end of the day, when this has actually been completed, this project has actually been completed, the students would do something. They can actually share, so that while it automatically saves right now, it's not being shared. So others can see what the students has actually done. And I will believe that it has to keep on going on. So that means that they'll have to share. So now when they share, you see where it's going to get to. So it's been shared, and yes, you see, congratulations, share your project. Other people can now try it out, give comments, and remix it. So that is the that's the mindset about Scratch, and that's what CSS is also all about. Anyway, so yeah, that's the student angle. Now that the student has completed something, I'm going to go back to the teacher's level so that you see all that has actually been done. Yeah, so I'm going to sign in here as a teacher. Okay, I think I have things. Yeah. Oh no, sorry. I entered the wrong class. I have a couple of classes here already. No. Yeah. Sorry, I have quite a drove of classes here. Okay. So I picked the right one now. Yes. So I wanted to show us the back end. So in the next 3 minutes, I'll be through with that. Okay. So your questions, please push it out. I'm going to respond to it um, uh, as I get on with this. After this, I'll be able to have access to your questions and I'll go over them. Now, the student has actually been there's a student, there's one student or two students here, and it's showing it. Yeah, so as a teacher, you'll be able to have access to the back end. So let me reduce this so that you'll be able to see clearly what's it. So now I have two students, and I'll be able to study what they have actually completed here. So, and if I want a co-teacher to join me and assess the class, I have the details here. So you could go to the people layer. Then I have the, so going back to the activities, you would be able to see view progress details. That place is always very, very important for you to be able to see. Now it gives you a kind of like a spreadsheet, and you'll be able to see what your students have actually completed. You see this green tag below shows the student that is actually online presently. Then what they have actually completed, if they watch everything, and you'll be able to see it in percentage, and then yeah, it gives you all the details. And then if they have completed all the activities that you want them to complete, you're going to see that. So it gives you an opportunity for you to be able to follow through with your students. So CS First is pretty impressive in its approach and in the curriculum that has actually been put together, cut to Google, to make sure that young people can start to get into coding actively, and then they wouldn't have to say, oh, it's the text. It's used a block-based programming system, and it's used in a play pattern, because Scratch was minded up through the fact that coding could actually be playful too. And then with that, while they are doing the play and they are actually imagining things that it's within their rank-on file, they are also coding. And that's the impressive thing about Scratch. And it is extensible. What they have here, they can actually do so many things with it. So now for further information and additional details, you could actually check classroom checklists, video training, teaching materials, materials for in-person workshops. Now, basically, to use CS First, there need to be computers, headphones, and internet access. Basically computers that they can actually listen and watch the video, and then because of the internet access is what they are going to use to download the materials. So all of that are very, very important. So you could adapt CS First to your class, to a program in your class, to a computer science class, and then from there you could bring in the practicality of what you do. in teaching computer science. So CS First is a wonderful package that right now I hope that maybe if several schools have access, I'll have an opportunity to have actually gone through this, then they should have actually tried CS First. But with that, you can never miss it. It gives them the right foundation. It gives the student the right foundation for them to be able to learn these things and move further. So that's a bit about it. And I think I'll be going over the questions shortly, and I'll be responding to it. Thank you.
John,
so Andy's coming in.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, John, thank you very much for taking us through CS First there. Great to see in detail. And lots of people asking in the chat about the video as well. And bear in mind, you can come back to this YouTube link at any point. So we are going through a lot of content today in one big run. But obviously, if you want to jump in and jump around, because my bit was around setup, that 30-minute slot is focused on CS First. And again, the bit that we've got coming up next with Lindsay about Google Classroom, you can jump back into the link that you came through today to get back into YouTube and just watch the sections that are relevant. And again, if you want to share those with people, just to share that, you feel free to. So, John, thank you very much. I know we'll speak to you in a little bit, but for now, we'll say goodbye. And I just wanted to bring everything up to date as we move into our sort of final piece of this webinar. So obviously we're joined by myself, Andrew Caffrey. Jess has been in the chat answering lots of questions. Thank you to Jess. She's still going over there. John's just taking us through CS First, and Lindsay joins us this hour as well as we start to dig into Google Classroom as well and look at that in a bit more detail. Just wanted to remind people of a few pieces. Don't forget, as we go through this, particularly around the setup areas, there are a range of Google for Education partners across Africa. Their details are in the Q&A doc and they're on screen now as well. Feel free to reach out to them if you need support, particularly around the setup area of Google for Education. As well, this webinar today is brought to you by MTN, and they have a range of data packages now. If you're thinking about, well, this looks great, but how do I get my students access to data to be able to get access to the tools? They have announced a range of data packages. Details are on the screen now around their data coupons and data packages that schools can buy and can gift out to students so they can get access to data for accessing online resources. So don't forget that exists. And of course, throughout the whole of today, we have our Q&A doc. So bit.ly/setupqa. You can access the Q&A doc. Lots of questions in there already with lots of answers coming in as well. So as we go through this, feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So what we're going to do now is say hello to Lindsay. I'll find where she's gone on my screen. Hi, Lindsay. Couldn't find you from over there. And you're going to take us through in a bit more detail Google Classroom.
I'm looking forward to it. Greetings, everyone from South Africa this afternoon. Molweni, Wamkelekile, and Goeiemiddag. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to share with you this afternoon the wonders of Google Classroom. I know Ben took you on a whirlwind tour earlier on, but I'm going to be taking you into a little bit more depth into the wonders of Google Classroom.
Take it away, Lindsay.
Sure thing. Right, so as you will probably remember from this morning, Google Classroom is our centralized space for communicating with our students, for connecting with our students, for all of the workflows that we need online, and of course when our students are with us potentially in class with devices. Google Classroom is really the centralized space that pulls together all of the incredible Google apps that we explored earlier in this particular webinar. So I'm going to take you through step by step how you would go about setting up a Google Classroom for yourself, how you would invite some students to your class, and then how we would communicate, how we would learn together, and look at some of the basic workflows that Google Classroom allows us to do. Our time is not nearly enough to cover everything, but I'm hoping that what we will have this afternoon is at least enough to empower you to get started with Google Classroom. Right, so what you are seeing on the screen in front of you can be found at classroom.google.com. That is where Google Classroom resides. And so if you just pop that into your browser, you will be able to access Google Classroom. So from the teacher or student side, Google Classroom has got a large plus button on the top right-hand corner. If you are signed up for Classroom as a teacher, that plus button in the top right-hand corner will give us two options: to join a class or create a class. But for students, they will only see the option of joining a class, right? So let's go ahead and see how beautifully easy it is to set up our very first Google Classroom. What you're seeing on my screen, by the way, are these little tiles of classrooms that I have already created where I communicate with different groups of students. So to create one of those tiles, we look at the plus in the top right, and then we select the Create Class option. Right, now Google gives us over here a number of different fields to put in information. Right, I'm going to create a class for my natural science students because I have a very exciting exploration of the world of frogs that I would like to introduce them to. So typically I call my class by the subject. You might like to call your class by the grouping as your school would name them. That is absolutely up to you. On this field, you don't have to put in any other information, but you can give detail about the section of work that you're covering, the subject, and even the room where your physical lessons take place. So all I'm going to do is pop some information in the top line to show you that that is really the basic that you need. And then we're going to come to the bottom right-hand corner and click that button that says Create. Right, so it'll take 1 or 2 seconds where Google does the magic in the background and gives us a beautiful classroom to communicate with our students. Usually it only takes 1 or 2 seconds. Today mine feels like taking longer. Let's give it a moment. There we go, super. All right, so now I am in my Google Classroom that I've just created. You'll see I've got the name of the classroom in the top left-hand corner, and I've got this brightly colored banner over here, which tells me that I am in my classroom. That's kind of the header of the classroom. Above the header, you might be able to see there are 4 different sections in Classroom, right? So we've got a section called the stream. Then there is a section called classwork. We've got another section called people, and we've got a section called grades, right? So we are going to go and have a look at each of these sections, but we're not going to be logical right now and follow from left to right. I'm going to go with what I believe is the most important thing in the classroom, and that is the people, right? If we don't have students or people in our classroom, then we are in a little bit of trouble, right? We want some students. So the first thing that I would want to do is to add some students to my class. To do that, I'm going to click on the word people that has appeared at the top of my classroom. Right, when I get in there, you'll see the people is divided naturally into 2 sections. I've got teachers. At the moment, I'm the only teacher in this class. And then I have no students, which is a pretty tragic situation. So to add students to my class, I've got 2 different options. Either if I have a list of my students' email addresses, I can choose this person icon with the plus, which says I can invite students. And then I can simply paste their email addresses into the box. Or if you are in an education domain like I am, I can simply add their names manually. All right, and then I can send them an invitation. That, however, is quite a process, right? As you can imagine, it takes some time to get that happening. So the alternative to add students into your class is to add your students via the class code. Now, the class code was actually sitting here until I invited my student Kobus to join, and now it seems to have disappeared. So we are going to head back to the stream. All right, and I'm going to point out to you something that we didn't notice the first time when we were in the stream necessarily, is that on this lovely colorful header, I've got an option here that says class code. And then there is a series of numbers and letters. That is the code my students would need to access to get into the classroom, okay? So if I have my students physically in a room, I usually use that nice magnifying box over there to make that code full screen. But of course, we can copy and paste that code and send it to our students via email or any other communication system that we're using. So for the students to join, they would be on the home page of Classroom. So we can head there quickly just to remind ourselves. Top left-hand corner, there is a menu button. If I click the menu button, I can go to Classes, right? That takes me back to classroom.google.com, which is my home page. And for the students, they would click the plus button. Then they would select Join Class, and they would paste in that box over there the letters and number combination that Classroom had given us, which I didn't actually copy. Apologies for that. And once they've entered the code, they then say join. All right, so it is that simple for our students to get into the class. I'm going to pop back to my natural science class now and head back to people. Once I have invited a student, their name will appear under students, but it will be grayed out. The minute they accept that invitation to join my class, their name will be in bold. Also, students that join via the code, their names will also be appearing in this list of students in bold. Right. You can, out of interest's sake, even add teachers to work with you in the classroom. But for today, we're going to concern ourselves with how do we get our students into the classroom, and then what do we do when we have students in our classroom? All right, so that is essentially the functionality of the People tab, all right? And we now have some people in our class, right? Hopefully we've got our students, they have accepted the invitation and they've joined us, all right? So we're gonna head back to the stream. Right, now the stream in Classroom, let me just scroll a little bit for you guys to see beneath the banner that we've already looked at, where the code lives. Right, the stream in Classroom is a place for communication. Right, you'll see Google actually gives me the little prompt there. It says, share something with your class. That tells me the stream is a place where we can communicate, okay? So as a teacher, if I wanted to communicate with my class, all I need to do is click on that little box that says share something with your class. I click on it, and now that box is going to pop forward. Right, so it gives me a place to write some text. So usually, actually, before I even invite students to my class, I like there to be a little welcome message. So when my students get to my class, they understand what this class is about. So I'm going to just pop a little message there. Hi, all. Welcome to our exploration. Great to have you here. So this is really just like a little announcement, a little post to welcome my students. What you will see, however, is that there is our friend, the paperclip, who we have loved for a very long time, I'm sure, that gives us an option to add things to this particular announcement, right? So one of the things that I like to add when I'm working remotely with my students, particularly in this time when many of our schools are still closed, is a plan for the week, right? So what is our plan for the week in this classroom? What are the different things that we are going to be learning together? So when I click the add button, you'll notice that a number of different options pop up, right? First of all, I get to add something from my Google Drive, which is, as you have already learned, the place where we share and store all of our files in Google. I can add a link to an external website. So potentially my link is, my plan for the week is living somewhere else. I can attach a file from my computer, just as I would attach something to an email, same system. And I can even include a YouTube video for my students to watch. Right, those are things that I can add to this announcement that I'm posting in my stream. But for now, I'm going to go and have a look in my Google Drive. Right, let me zoom out a little bit so that you can see. All right, and if I have a look in my Google Drive, I can search for this thing that I'm looking for called Plan for the Week. So this is directly searching in Google Drive through Google Classroom. All right, so now I'm going to grab my plan for the week, which is a Google Doc, and I'm going to click the Add button to add that to my post for my students. Right, so now I've got the plan for the week and I've got a welcome message, and you'll see that I've got this nice big purple button over here. It won't always be purple. It depends on the color scheme of your classroom, but whatever color it is, I can click post, and that is going to post this announcement into my stream for my students. Right, so if we now have a look at the stream underneath that lovely banner that we had, I've still got the option to share with my class, but over here I now have a welcome message as well as a document that my students can click on to open up when they get to the classroom. Right, so whatever it is that you would like to share with your students, know that the stream is the place where your students land when they get to classroom. So it's always a nice idea to post something there, and you would have seen how simple it is just by clicking on that little box that says share something with your class. All right, great stuff. So now I've got some students in my class. We've got some communication happening, which is wonderful. You might want to know that your students also have the same option. So your students can actually click on that box when they get to the class, and they can also share questions, ideas, links with the class, and those will appear as consecutive messages in the stream, right? So I'm just going to type here student message sample so you get the idea. The students' messages appear in the stream as well, and you'll see when we've got a student message over there, there is then an option for the class to add a comment. So that almost creates a discussion thread for our students to be communicating, which is a really wonderful thing now that all of the time, but particularly now that our students are not all together in one physical space. Right, so now I know you're wondering, like, probably, that's great, but how do I communicate with my students and give them classwork, right? I've given them a plan, but how do I give them the work that is in that plan, right? So we give our students work in the classwork tab. So let's head over there and see what options Google Classroom gives us. Right, quite a few things happening over here. What you'll notice in the classwork tab is the link to the Google Meet, which I know you guys saw earlier, and Ben showed you and John took you through how we communicate with our students in Google Meet. There is a linked Google Calendar with all of the work in this particular class that I assign them, and everything that I do in Classroom is automatically saved in my Google Drive, nicely organized in a folder, okay? Those are those three options, which just so that you know what they mean. But what we're going to look at here is this lovely big button that says plus create, right? What are the things that I can create and send to my students? So let's click on him and see what's over there. Right, couple of options that I can engage with my students around. We're not going to go through all of them right now, but we'll just have a look at some examples. So the first thing that I can do is I can create an assignment, right? So let's click create assignment. Let's have a look and see what happens. Right, when I create an assignment for my students, so let's say, for instance, I wanted to do an exploration of the life cycle of a frog. That is the assignment, and I want my students to do a little bit of a drag and drop activity to put the pieces of a life cycle in the correct order. Or I want my students to do a traditional worksheet, right? Anything where you would like your students to give you work back, right? It's not just a one-way communication like the stream, it's a two-way communication, which we would want to create an assignment for. Then, of course, I can paste a number of instructions over there explaining the task. I'm not going to type that now, but you would just type that in there. And then we see again our add button, which we recognize already now from the stream. If I zoom in, you'll see exactly the same features again. I can add something from my Google Drive. I can add a link. I can add a file. I can add from YouTube. So let's have a look and see if I add from my Google Drive. A little activity sheet that I have. There's a little life cycle of a frog. That is a drag and drop activity, and I'm going to add that for my students. Okay, this file could be a Google Drawing, a Google Doc, a Google Slides, Google Sheets, any of the different file types that we get in Google. As soon as I add that file, you'll see that I'm given a number of different options with that file. The first option says students can view the file. Well, if I just wanted my students to view the file, then I would probably have posted it as an announcement rather than an assignment, okay? Unless, of course, it's an instruction document. But anywhere in Google where you ever see a tiny little triangle like you can see on the right over here, we always want to click on it and see what's there. So let's see what options we get when we click on it. Right, fabulous. Students can view the file. We saw that one. Students can edit the file, means that all of the students in my class will be able to edit that one individual file. That's not going to be great for my drag and drop activity. What I'm much more interested in is this one over here that gives me the option to make a copy for each student. So I'm going to choose that one, right? And if I zoom out, you'll see that that instruction is now there. With the document, it says make a copy for each student. On the right-hand side, you'll see I've got a number of options as well. I can allocate some marks or grades or points, depending on which country you're from and what you like to call those. So I'm going to call that 20 marks. I can indicate a due date, right? So let us give our students till Friday afternoon at maybe let's make it 2 p.m. to complete this assignment. Wonderful. And then I can assign a topic. So if we are learning in classroom about different topics, this particular topic may be about amphibians, I can create a topic over there. And then there is also the added functionality of creating rubrics. Excuse me, that's a little bit beyond the scope of today. But just know that you can add rubrics and assess your student work with rubrics through Classroom. Then in the top right-hand corner, I'm going to click on the Assign button. I do have the option in the tiny triangle also to rather schedule that assignment or to make it a draft if I wanted to come back and edit it, but I'm going to go with Assign. Right, then it's going to take a couple of seconds because what it's doing at the moment is making a copy for every single student. And now in classwork, we'll notice, first of all, my new topic has a nice big heading, and underneath that, I can see the assignment that I've just created for my students, right? So what I can do, if I click on the assignment itself, right, first of all, it will give me an overview of the number of students that have turned in that assignment and that I have assigned it to. Of course, in this classroom right now, as you know, I don't have students, but I would be able to see those over there. I'll take you into another classroom in a sec so you can see this in more detail. And then if I click on View Assignment at the bottom of the post, that takes me into a student assignment view where I can see their work. Right, so I'm just going to pop over to a different classroom of mine for 1 second and take you into a different assignment where I've given all of my students a copy of a task. There we go, that's a great one. So this one was an essay assignment where I assigned them an opportunity to write an essay. You'll see here 0 have turned it in, 1 it's been assigned and they have not submitted it, and 3 I have already graded and given feedback. If I pop into View Assignment over there, you'll now see that I can actually see in this window on the side, let me zoom in, all of my students' work. So I can see Cheryl's work, I can see Cobus's work, I can see Warren's work. if I click on, let's go with Cheryl's work. If I click on her work, that will open up the Google Doc that Cheryl has submitted. Right, and I can give Cheryl comments on her work. I can give her a grade, and I can return that work to Cheryl. All right. Wonderful. I'm hoping that you were all able to see that. So when we give our students work in Classroom, Classroom collects all of their work in one place. And it also gives us a space where I can give my students various different grades. So let's go back to our natural science class. Let me show you one more type of classwork that I could give my students before we have a look at where those grades would go for our students and how I could find those. So in classwork, I also have the option of creating a quiz assignment. So you would have seen earlier the wonders of Google Forms, right? What I can do over here is I can actually have a quiz, which I could give my students, assessing their different types, or their knowledge rather, of the different types of frogs. If I click on blank quiz, that will open that up as a Google form, which I can edit for my students and include questions about all the different types of frogs, and make that a self-marking quiz as well. All right, so I'm not going to edit the quiz now, but as you can see, the same view comes up. I can give my students a mark allocation, due date, topic. Let's pop that one under amphibians since it belongs there too. And let's make that one 50 marks. And then I can assign that to my students. Again, 1 or 2 seconds later. Now, if I look under amphibians, you'll see that I have the frog quiz that I have allocated to my students. And I can go ahead and view that assignment. And I will be able to, you'll see on the right-hand side here, once my students have completed that self-marking Google form quiz, they can, I can import their grades directly into Google Classroom. Right, so as we wrap up, let us have a look at the grades tab, which is the final tab we haven't explored together. So we have explored the stream, we've explored classwork, we've looked at getting people into our class, and Google automatically will add any grades that you assign in Classroom into a grade book. So here's an example of a grade book. You can see down the left-hand side, I have all of my students. Every single task that I have assigned in Classroom has got a column in this particular grade book. Right, where I have yet to grade it, it is quite clear that I haven't done my job on assigning those. Where students have not submitted work, it is quite clear that their work is missing. And where I have allocated grades to all of my students, those are all found in the grade book. And that grade book can also be exported so that you can import that grade book into whichever system it is that your school is using for recording and reporting of your marks and assessments. Right, so just again, a quick little recap. In Google Classroom, we've got the different sections. The stream we typically use for one-way communication, sharing resources. When I say one-way communication, I mean I don't want my students to send files back to me, right? Where I want to just communicate with my students and engage with them. However, it's important to note that the things that I posted in classwork also appear in the stream, right? So if the teacher has posted a new assignment, the students can see that in the stream. When they click on it, it will give them the option to go to that assignment from a student perspective, and then they can complete the assignment there. Right, so that is the stream. Then we have the classwork section. Great space for us to create a number of different types of assignments, quizzes, ask our students questions, share materials. I can even reuse posts from old classrooms. Of course, my people tab is where I would see who are my co-teachers and which students I have in the class. And then finally, the grades tab is where I would see the academic progress of all of my students according to every assignment that I have given them in Google Classroom. And just a reminder again to get out of a particular class and return to your classroom homepage where you have all of the tiles of all of your different students. In the top left-hand corner, you're going to go to the menu button and you'll have a look at going to Classes Home. Just out of interest, your students get a to-do list of all of the assignments posted in their various classes, which is another reason to love Google Classroom. But if we pop back to the home page, I will see there all of my tasks. And for your students on their view as well, once they look at it as a tile of a particular class, they will see, this is the assignment I posted earlier, remember, due tomorrow, exploration of a frog's life cycle, and they can actually click on that and be directed straight back to the class. Right. So I think we've done a decent job of a basic introduction to Google Classroom. Happy to entertain questions if there are, Andy, but wishing you all the best in your endeavors to create your first Google Classroom and then hopefully many, many more after that.
Lindsay, thank you very much for taking us through that introduction to Google Classroom. Lots of great feedback in the chat. I was going to say, don't forget, we've still got the Q&A document as well that Jesse's busy responding to questions on. So if people have any questions about anything we're covering, feel free to drop them in. But Lindsay, thank you very much for joining us and taking us through that in detail. And hopefully for people who are, not watching or are sharing that, the link to this YouTube will be available for people to use if you want to share this video with teachers that you're working with so that they can watch that specific 30 minutes to learn about Classroom. That's a really useful way of using this webinar in that way. So, Lindsay, well, thank you for joining us. Drop you out because John is going to rejoin us. And John's going to take us through the last of the three tools we're going to look in detail. And John, we're going to dig into applied digital skills. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes, applied digital skills. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll bring your screen in if you want to give us a quick overview or an overview of applied digital skills.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. Hello, everybody. So my name is John. Okay, so it's been exciting to have everyone on this journey. It's getting towards our 4 hours that we've actually been doing this. So I really appreciate everybody that's actually been on it continually. Now, we are going into another Google product program that is really, really exciting. I talked about CS First initially, but right now I'm going to, someone may ask, okay, so if it's not coding, then what else can we learn in IT? Well, basically there's so many things that you could learn, and the Google tools are wonderful to learn, and this has actually been ported into the applied digital skills. So you're going to see that shortly. So I'll start from the Google Teacher Center. The essence of that is so that you could always remember to go back to the Teacher Center for a whole lot of things. There are so many things going on in Google for Education, but you wouldn't know so much about it except you come often to the Google Teacher Center. Now, Applied Digital Skills is actually on the programs, and I think I already have that clicked. Then if you scroll down, you're going to see, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see CS First has actually been talked about already. Then this is Applied Digital Skills. Then this is Be Internet Awesome. So it talks about online safety and all that, digital citizenship. So, but we're going into Applied Digital Skills, and you could actually click on it, and then it will get you to this place. Now, this is the default page for Applied Digital Skills, and talks about teach and learn practical digital skills using our free project-based video curriculum. Now, what it does is this. You're going to see that shortly. It makes a curriculum out of a particular Google app, and then you're able to design questions. But before I go into signing up, let me quickly show us something. Now we have the lessons. And on the lessons, this is very important for every one of us to see right now. Look on the left-hand side. Let me screen big so that you're going to see that bigger. So now it says search for a lesson, and then you could actually see that the audience. Now we have 4 specific audience here. So look at it yourself. It's almost all encompassing. So late elementary, middle school, high school, adult learners, they can all be part of the applied digital skills. They can always learn something. So it's for an all-comers thing. Then the next thing is the digital tool. So what are the things that are going to be learned under applied digital skills? Then you have the app script, calendar, docs. If you want to do a good diving yourself and you want your class to do a good diving into some of these things that some of the apps that has actually been talked about in the whole webinar, you could actually find that here. Docs, drawings, forms, Gmail, Hangouts. So you're going to get a whole lot of these. So they are actually just a second. I wanted to count the exact number of programs that are on it. So yeah, the digital tools, yeah, there are about 13 of it. Then you also have, yes, you also have the topics. Now the topics are being added continually, and here we have about 13, I think, yes. So you see, you could have art, business, communication, not just limited to computer science, financial skills, maths, social studies, and this is increasing. Google educators are the ones making up this. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to log in and pick one of these topics, and you're going to see how it gets done. So for applied digital skills, you will need, the teacher will need the Gmail account, and also the student will need a Gmail account. So I'm going to sign in here, and then yes, I'm going to sign in with this. Okay, good. So now the beauty about, yes, you're going to see that right now. I'm going to set up the class. So it's asking me, because I'm signing in for the very first time with this account, so it's asking me that am I a student or a teacher? Now for a teacher, you would create a class, and then you have a class code that you can give to your student to join your class. So that's how it works. So let's get into it. I'm going to yeah, okay. I'm not going to log in with this right now. So I'm going to quickly go back because I wanted to show us something clearly. Yeah, so I'm going to log in with this rather. Yeah. Yeah, so this is going to set it up for a teacher. I think there should be, yes. So I already have a teacher account here. And yes, so this is it. So this is a teacher account. I think I have to switch this because I actually switched it from a teacher to a student. Change role. Yeah, so, and that's pretty something that you could actually do as well. If you have your teacher, if you have one email and you have your teacher account, you could go to on top of the tab where your image is, click on my profile, and then change. You can switch. So you can switch from a teacher to a student. So I've actually switched to a teacher right now. So I go back to, so I have a class set up already. Okay, my classes. So you go to my classes, and then in my classes, I have set up these, and so I'm going to set up another class. So on the left-hand side, you'll see where you could actually create a class. So you can create a class. So it's asking you the basic question. Is it middle or high school or adult learners? So I'm going to pick middle or high school. Then I'm going to pick a color. So I'm going to give it a name. Yeah, I have great school as the name. Yes, so I create the class. So when I create the class, it's going to bring it up. Then I'll be able to select. So I've given it an opportunity to actually give me an outlook of what lessons I could share or what lessons I have access to. So I click Add Lessons. Then when I click Add Lessons, so if I want, since I'm talking about a middle school, so I'm going to click a middle school. That's relatively secondary or junior secondary or in some schools in West Africa. And so I want them to learn about dogs. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And okay, I want to let it give me dogs and also sheets. Sheets. Okay, good. Yeah. So then what topic do I really want? Which area do I want a material on? So I'm going to say financial skills, and then give me something else. Social studies. All right, good. Okay, it's not giving me things on financial skills on. So that's how you sit to the so. But I have something on social studies. So we could explore something on ethics, work, role, innovators. Oh, that seems very nice for me to pick up. So I'm going to explore a topic on innovators. So now it is actually set it up for me as a teacher. And then these are the activities that would be played out. You know, you'll be able to, just like in CS First, you'll be able to go through it and then download the video and all of that. So I'm not going to assess that as a teacher. I'm going to go back into it as a student, and then yeah. So before you sit that, so now take a look at this. Before I switch back to a student for what the student's going to see quickly, you see the lesson plan. You can download it. The sample rubric that you could actually use for that class. Certificates of completion can actually be done. I'm going to be talking about something afterwards. Right now, I'm going pretty fast. When you talk about certifications and all that, then you could download all of the videos at once, and this is very nice. So that at the end of the day, you could set up your class with the students with a minimal bandwidth use, because I know several people will kind of like look at it that, oh, would we be going through the videos continually? But with this is always an affordance. And then something interesting is this. The tools that they're going to use, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and also of others, they have an offline part, an offline version that you could have on the phone or on the desktop. So with the offline version, or when you click offline for these tools, what that means is that without the internet and you just already have the video shared with it, they can actually try out and work out these things on those Google tools, on either Google Sheets or Google Docs or whatever. So I'm going to move into the class right now. Okay, but before I move into the class, I have to check out the class code. Every class that you create on this on Applied Digital Skills will have a class code. So you have great schools, so you have the class code. You can just click on this, and it will copy the class code for you on your clipboard. So I'm going to find a place I'm going to drop that, and when you have the class code, then let me go in and sign in as a student. Clicking and signing. Okay, yeah, so it's getting me out. So I'm going to get this out, get it out. I'm going to sign in back. So I want to get in so that you see what the view for the student is. So yeah, it's going to come in. Take something. Yeah, good. Yeah, details days. So I'm a student. So what do our students say? Let's try to roll it in. Okay, so good. So a student wouldn't create a class, but it can actually join a class, or she can actually join a class. So what we're going to do now, I can click join a class here, and I can click join a class here. Okay, if you're taking it with the teacher, click here to join the class. So if I click on this, it's going to ask for the class code, and I think I have the class code somewhere there, and I click it, and yeah, it gives me, yeah, this is it. Yeah, I go in there, and then for monitoring and evaluation, for processes, for you to kind of like be able to follow your students, yeah, this is it. I have actually not dropped an activity as a teacher. Oh my goodness. So I'll quickly jump out of these. Okay. This is going to, so let me quickly jump out of this so that I'll drop an activity for my students. Yeah. So that's what they would see. Okay, go ahead. So apply digital skills. It's an opportunity for your students to add lessons. So I'm going to add the lessons. It's already showing that I have one student signed in already. So I'm going to add a lesson. Add the lesson. Okay. Okay, I was speaking middle schools the other time. Sorry, I missed that up. So topic, I'm working on social studies. Okay, good. And then I have thoughts. You could actually have everything. If you check it to it picks everything by default. But if you now really wanted to kind of like be some specifics, so I have innovators putting back into the platform. So yeah, the student will be able to see a topic on innovators right now. So I'm going to pull out of here. I'm going to sign it back as a student. Okay. Yeah, so it already recognizes the fact that I'm a student, and then it's going to take me to the dashboard. And yeah, okay, good. Oh, sorry, it's not picking a class for me. That seems to be because I have several classes. Okay, but what I'm going to do is this: I'm going to enter into the teacher's mode from the other account here, so that I don't spend too much time going out on that. Okay, so my profile, I'm going to switch. Okay, so you're going to see what the student is going to see. Okay, good. So yeah, this is it. Okay, join the class. Okay, I'm not going to join the class again. Okay. Yeah, so this is relatively a lesson, and then yeah, the teaching materials are available, so the student can actually go into the class. And the beauty about applied digital skills, as it were, is such that while the student is going through this, it will get to a point that it'll be required to like if you pick the financial create a budget. That's the lesson we're going through right now, and you're going to see on the right hand side it's going to be talking about the fact that go sheet.google.com, open a blank spreadsheet, name your spreadsheet. So it's put the link there, and it will in the instruction that's going to be here, they can actually have the captions on. This presenter is going to talk about sheets and what they need to do. So and then the specific thing they're supposed to carry out. Then after they've actually done their work in sheets, they can paste the link here and then share the work. So pretty much during this time of stay at home, unprecedented time of COVID and all that, I think applied digital skills is one of the key tools that everyone could actually leverage on, from schools to parents, at home. Even a student could actually pick up a lesson to learn him or herself. So this is a student account. So let me pull out the class. Let me try to pull out this class and look for lessons that I could do. Yeah, so you click lessons as a student. You could actually pick up lessons and then do something on, perhaps say you wanted to learn something about calendar. Then it's supposed to be for high school. So, and it says organize your time with a digital agenda. So a student can actually pick up a lesson in itself and get started. So you just start, and yes, the class can start, and you could get all of those details followed up through. So now, finally, because we'll be rounding up shortly, so I would, for now, I want to bring Andy on. But before I bring Andy on to come and talk more about some other things before we round off, I want to show you something. GSuite applications, GSuite packages are what is in applied digital skills, and there's a GSuite certification for students. So I'm in there right now. You could get into that when you get into Teacher Center. Yes, you could get certifications, and you click GSuite certification, and then a student can actually register to write an exam on all of these apps: Drive, Gmail, Hangouts, Meet, Dot, Sheets, Forms, Slides. And then what is so fantastic about it is that you could pick up your learning practically from applied digital skills. So for any school that want their kids, or for a parent that want their kids to really get hands-on to learn about docs, sheets, be able to handle it properly and all that, first I would advise that they should get on applied digital skills and start to go through the lessons. Then second is that they can actually try to put themselves on by doing the GSuite certification. It's always very, very important that you kind of like show for what you know in those platforms by doing such certifications. It's going to really, it's an enabler, and it's going to really help. So there's still a lot more that you could actually have with digital skills. Let me get out of here, and then okay, I'm going to switch to a teacher mode, but so that would already told us about some of those things that are available for teachers as well, so which parents could actually make good opportunity of to as well. Yeah, so for teachers, okay, so yeah, okay, so adult learners can actually come on here, pick up information. So many things could actually be done together, and there are a whole lot of projects that are down now, like Andy talked about. Google for Education, the platform, the Teacher Center keeps improving, and there are a whole lot of additions to it. So every time you come, you're going to see some newer things, some new lessons and all that. And that's why you have to afford yourself the opportunity to be able to go through it. So Andy, you can actually come on, and then we can actually ask if there are questions that I need to respond to about applied digital skills.
No questions, John. So thank you for taking us through applied digital skills. Well, no questions in the chat so far. I haven't just checked the doc, but there might be some in the doc. But just a huge thank you from me for doing that and adding those in. Just want to run people through some reminders. Just obviously that if you are thinking about setting up Google for Education, there are a range of partners across Africa who can support you with that, and their details are on the screen right now. If you need support and help. Don't forget, of course, that MTN have got the data package that's available for schools. So if you're concerned about getting data to students, some details on the screen there, and obviously you can follow up through their website on that, and how you can enable your students to get access to data in terms of getting access then to tools like Google Classroom and CS First. And so we've been answering questions in the document, and feel free to check out all the questions and answers in the document. But really just wanted to say a big thank you to John, yourself, and to Lindsay, who joined us earlier, and to Jess, who's there as well, for joining us on this webinar. Jess, she's slightly cropped to the bottom there. I'll just try and take the side bit off. But thank you for joining us today. Jess, thank you for answering all the questions. John, thank you for taking us through the tools. And then earlier on, obviously, we heard from Lindsay and from Ben as well about different tools. And thank you for everyone for staying with us today. We do hope this video is a really useful tool for you all, not just for now. It's quite a long lot of information to take in one go. But the ability to come back to this video and watch it in small pieces as and when you need. So,
Andy, I've mentioned in the chat, but we will add timestamps so that you can jump to the different parts of the videos that are relevant for you later.
Yeah, we'll pop that in. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us today for this webinar. I hope you found it useful, and we'll see you all soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.